Yeah. I'm going to do something different to the clap, I think, today. I'm going to try something else. We're going to count. We're going to go 3, 2, 1, and then we're going to say, "Diamonds are forever, forever, forever."
This is clearly for the outtakes, isn't it? This is.
No, I wouldn't do that.
I held back from including Mark's fart in our last podcast. I was very tempted.
He's turning into a bit of an old geezer, isn't he?
He thought he'd get away with it, did he? He thought, oh, no one's going to hear me. I'll just call the mic. That's hilarious.
Oh, God. Right then, peeps. Shall we get going?
Yeah.
Right. Just stop recording. Right, there we go. It's not like I only recorded about 7 episodes of this thing last week, and I'm out of practice. Okay. Right, ready?
Oh,
yep.
3, 2, 1.
Diamonds are forever, 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 diamonds are forever. When do we stop? You didn't say when to stop.
I think I can sync it from here.
80% of the world's diamonds come from mines in South Africa.
So I don't think someone's stockpiling.
What we need to know is who the stockpilers are.
Curious how everyone who touches those diamonds seems to die.
My dentist is dead in South Africa. That little old lady in Amsterdam. Shady got his last night. They missed me once. And you're next.
We gotta get those diamonds out of here and fast.
Where are they?
They say Willard White hasn't set foot out of there in 3 years, and no one has seen him. No one.
This is not the real White House. He's not the president. Why don't we just go and see him?
I do so enjoy our little visits, Mr. Bond. However potentially painful they may be.
Who are you?
One chance. Where can I find him? Let's get down to business.
Whatever's happening, Mr. Bond, has started.
You just killed James Bond.
Welcome to the Tailoring Talk Show with me, your host, Roberto Revilla. I'm a bespoke tailor, menswear designer, and founder of Roberto Revilla London Suit and Shirt Makers. This is the podcast where you drop in for the threads, but often leave with something quite unexpected. If you haven't already, please support the show by subscribing and leaving us a rating and a review if you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. It is time for part 7 of the Tailoring Talk James Bondathon, where we follow the James Bond film series in order, ticking off each movie as each month goes by. My guests and I will be deep diving into each film, covering everything from our overall review to the clothes, gadgets, cast, behind the scenes stories, and our favourite moments. Step into the Tailoring Talk time machine with me as we head to 1971. Sean Connery is back as our favourite 00 agent, ushering the series into a new decade and preparing us for the arrival of a certain Mr. Moore. As ever, I am joined by our resident poker star. If MI6 had put him up against Le Chiffre in Casino Royale, Le Chiffre would be crying more than blood after our man takes him to the cleaners. It's Philip Rahman. Philip, how are you?
Bobby, how you doing? I'm good, how are you?
Yeah, I'm okay, thanks. I just realised I've been introducing you with this kind of poker slant for the last few months, and anyone who has actually checked you out on LinkedIn and seen that you're a mortgage advisor would be very confused.
Well, it's a business platform, and my company, everything I put on there has to be representative of the company I work for. But on my personal Instagram, then there will be more poker elements around.
So the company on your LinkedIn profile is potentially just a sinister front for the nefarious deeds that you finance through your poker playing.
Well, I wouldn't like to say, but yeah, that could be possible.
This sounds very familiar to a plot of a film.
Yeah, and speaking of which, yet again, we are delighted and privileged to be joined by my friend from the Play, Pause, Turn podcast. That's the Play, Pause, Turn podcast. The coolest, dark saber-wielding IT teacher around. His voice is so sexy, it makes birds suddenly appear every time he is near. It's Jon Evans. Jon, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you. I live in dread of your intros whenever I come on the podcast.
Oh, you love them really. Do you ever play them back better?
No.
Oh. I'm gonna put a compilation of them together at the end of the Moore era. I think I'll have enough by then. Okay, so on with the show. Diamonds Are Forever. It was my first time ever. Philip, I think it was your second time. Jon, once again, eyes popping out of head. He's had quite a few of those moments recently, actually, because we've been chatting on the Discord for Play, Pause, Turn, and Jon has discovered that I basically grew up ignoring just about every classic sci-fi film ever, unless it had the word Star Wars in front of it. Jon, this wasn't your first time Diamonds Are Forever, was it?
No, I think actually this was my second time too. So I'm not that my eyes weren't popping that much, but I think I know why it was my second time.
I vaguely remember it being on one bank holiday when I was maybe about 5 or 6 years old. And we used to, all the families used to gather at my grandmother's massive house down in Bromley. That sounds really ostentatious, but I mean, they probably bought it for £3 in the 1950s or something. But that's where we all used to gather on bank holiday weekends. And so me and my cousins would be playing. And then my uncles, inevitably, who probably would have all been younger than we are now, in their late 20s or whatever, they would have all been wanting to watch the James Bond film. So I kind of vaguely remember Diamonds Are Forever being on in the background this would probably have been in 82, 83, running on ITV or whatever it was called back then. But I obviously did not watch it at all.
Do you think it was family viewing material?
Having seen it last night, no. I think it was young adolescent going through puberty material,
Yep.
Especially Plenty O'Toole. We'll talk about her later. There we go. But it was released in December 1971, runtime of 120 minutes, budget of 7.2 million, took 116 million at the box office, which Cubby Broccoli at the time said it broke all records. So I think a lot of that box office was probably down to Sean Connery's return. The film is based on Ian Fleming's 1956 novel of the same name, and is the second of 4 Bond films directed by Guy Hamilton. He returned as the producers wanted to get a bit more of the feel of Goldfinger. The story has Bond impersonating a diamond smuggler to infiltrate a smuggling ring, and he soon uncovers a plot by his old enemy Blofeld, who wants to use diamonds to build a space-based laser weapon. Bond has to battle his enemy for one last time to stop the smuggling and stall Blofeld's plan of destroying Washington, D.C. and extorting the world with nuclear supremacy. I think we might just kind of try and run through the film in some sort of order. I'm going to do the spoiler warning, traditionally late, but if you haven't seen Diamonds Are Forever, it's only been out for 51 years now. Get yourself to a cinema, because actually it's the 60th anniversary of Bond, so it is actually showing in some places. More so up north than it is down south for some reason. I have no idea why.
It has been playing locally where I live.
Ah, okay. Well, there you go. Also out in the sticks where John lives. And go see it and then come back and join us because we will be spoiling the living daylights out of this film. I still haven't. Sorry, John's got his head in his hands and Phil is actually his usual cool. No, he's shaking his head. Yep, there we go. Sorry about that. Anyway, we're still quite far from living daylights as well, actually.
We are.
Like very far away from living daylights. So, yeah. So, first reactions to the opening sequence. Phil.
Well, we got an introduction to Mr. Wint and Mr. Kidd, who can only be described as Dumb and Dumber. It seemed to me that this particular film tried its best to attract more of an American audience. They thought to themselves, well, there's enough people in England watching it, so let's focus our attention on making it something that the Americans can relate to. So they managed to get these two actors from somewhere, and I think it was Mr. Wint that has the long hair at the back.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it just looks like some old-style geography teacher or history teacher that's just managed to find his way into being a villain in this film. I mean, John, you're a teacher. I mean, do you relate to any of these teachers in your school?
Well,
any teachers in your school, John, that look like paedophiles? Let's just get it out there.
I don't think I'm going to answer that question.
This episode is definitely getting an explicit rating tick when it gets uploaded. Yeah. I've already, you know.
I said, to be fair, I said geography teacher, not paedophile.
Potter Smith, you say potato, I'll say potato.
Potter Smith, who plays, I've got to get the right way around here now. I think he's Mr. Wint, isn't he, the long-haired one?
Yeah, well, I want to come to those two in a little bit because that's not actually the opening sequence. Because the opening sequence, we get the gun barrel, and then we get a series of seemingly across the globe where Bond is looking for Blofeld, and so he's strangling just about everybody he can get his hands on from. Well, it looks like Japan first, then he goes to Cairo, and then he ends up, I don't know where he ends up, but then he strangles this poor woman on the beach with her bikini top.
Did you pause? Did you pause it then? Did you pause it?
I actually did pause it. Do you want to see? Yeah, it's not very clear, but I think you can see a nipple there.
Which is quite scandalous for a Bond film, really, isn't it?
There's a lot of those moments in this film.
Didn't you say in Dr. No that Ursula Andress was butt naked in that film, though?
I can't remember because John and I were meant to go back purely for research purposes, of course, and see if that was indeed Ursula Andress in her full glory, but I don't know.
I think a scene was cut from Dr. No where there was nudity. I think if you look at the deleted scenes, it might show that. I found this intro really weird. Didn't you find it really weird? I don't think Connery was involved in this intro. I get the feeling they dubbed his dialogue in over some actor strangling people around the globe, and the dubbing was very bad. If you notice, really, if you watch it, a lot of the speech does not match any of the lips in any of the characters. It was just very weird. It almost felt like a Saturday morning cartoon.
Yeah,
really, really strange.
Large part of this film felt like parody to me, and I don't want to be too down on it. So I'm glad that I saw it yesterday and I've had a chance to sleep on it. And then I also listened to the Really 007 podcast this morning for their review of when they saw this film on the big screen. I think it was back in May. So I could actually just kind of get some other podcasters' kind of views on it and Bond fans' views on it as well. So I don't want to be too hard on this film, but yeah, that opening was it was quite jarring, and it was almost like they were trying too hard to make the statement that it's Sean Connery, he's back in the role. Forget about that last film. The producers definitely didn't want us remembering that On Her Majesty's Secret Service ever existed. But then at the same time, you kind of get the feeling he's after Blofeld because of what happened at the end of the last film with
Tracy.
Rick dying and being killed off. That he's out for revenge, because I've been saying to you guys for weeks now that I was really looking forward to seeing this, and Phil just basically kept trying to tee me up for disappointment, because I've been listening to the title song, and you know, just the first opening strands. I mean, it's one of my favourite Bond songs of all time. I think it's absolutely amazing. But the strands at the beginning just sort of lend themselves. They have so much emotion to them. And then when that sort of, you know, when the kind of instruments all come in and the song really kind of gets off, you can kind of almost imagine Diamonds Are Forever. If you hadn't seen the film like me, and you let your imagination run wild, you could really use that song to kind of form your own script about a big revenge thriller where he goes after Blofeld for, you know, what he did, killing his wife and all the rest of it. And obviously that's not what we got here, and the jam was definitely swiftly taken out of my donut.
I mean,
then we cut.
I just want to say about the song. I mean, lyrically, the songs were written by Don Black, and I've always liked the way Don Black writes songs, because he takes a lot of his inspiration from Jimmy Webb, and Jimmy Webb always writes songs where the first line of the song, you know immediately what the song's about. You don't have to guess. And Diamonds Are Forever is very much like that. The way he kind of like starts off the song, you know immediately that you're in a Bond theme, and it's really iconic. And the music going around the lyrics work really, really well. And Don Black's brilliant at that. I've always been a fan of his songwriting.
So Don Black is in conversation with John Barry and says, you know, how the hell are we going to approach this? Because Diamonds Are Forever isn't exactly the most kind of sexy sounding sort of title to a film. And John Barry says, well, you know, if you treat a diamond, if you take the attitude that the diamond is a metaphor for the male appendage, and then that's where lyrics like, you know, touch it, kiss it, then caress it came about. And reading that little bit of behind the scenes trivia, John Barry said to him, it puts a whole new meaning on the song, and it changes your approach to how you write it. It definitely changed my approach to how I listen to it now. I don't think I ever want to listen to it ever again.
Yeah.
I'm going to have to listen to it again now.
Yeah, so now you listen to the lyrics with that in your head, and yeah, it puts a completely different complexion on the song altogether. Actually, I think you were right, actually, Phil. The Kid and Thingy-majiggy, Kid and Play. What were their names?
Dumb and Dumber.
Kid and Play.
Kid and Wint.
Dumb and Dumber. They were the opening bit, weren't they?
Yeah.
Yeah.
In my notes, right. I've got Mr. Wint and Mr. Kid are awesome.
Yeah.
In my
they're played. So they're played respectively by oh god, I keep thinking Crispin Glover, but he's obviously Crispin Glover's dad. Brian Glover, Crispin Glover's dad from Back to the Future.
Yeah,
and Putter Smith, who's not an actor. He was a jazz musician. One of the producers, I think, had picked a jazz musician who was playing at a performance of Thelonious Monk, but then that guy didn't want to do it, and then Putter Smith was also playing, and so they basically pulled him out of nowhere because he had such an interesting look. And it was these two are quite a bold choice in terms of character, because they're both gay. They're in a homosexual relationship, which I kind of wasn't expecting for a film that was made in 1971. So I think it was actually quite forward-thinking for its time. Because when they held hands after killing the doctor and sort of blowing up the helicopter and skipping off across the beach, I was like, why are they holding hands? These two are complete freaks and weirdos. Caroline was like, they're gay, right? And I was like, oh, really?
But
there's a couple of references to it, though.
I didn't pick up on them gay.
Oh, I did, because to jump right to the final scene where they're fighting Bond with the pudding, he gets very upset when Mr. Wint gets knocked over the side of the boat. He gets very upset as if his lover has been killed, and gets very angry. And there's a couple of other references to it, I think, on the plane or something when they're flying as well. But I'm sure you've read this fact as well, Bobby. The funniest fact about them is they convince Sean Connery that they were actually openly homosexual, and throughout the filming they were, very camp. And then a few years later, whilst on an airline flight, Bruce Glover was actually flirting with a female flight attendant, and you'd hear a Scottish accented voice in the background saying, "You son of a bitch," as Glover turned around and saw that it was Sean Connery on the other side of the plane, when obviously the penny had dropped and he realised that they were winding him up on the film set. I think that's brilliant.
Brian Glover said that when he was told that they were in a relationship, he took one look at Potter Smith and thought to himself, absolutely no freaking way. I wouldn't, even if I was, I wouldn't. And then
of it though, it's a charming relationship, I think.
So what he did, because obviously he's a professional, so what he did is like, right, okay, I need to kind of develop the character for this. So the more he looked at Potter, he thought to himself, okay, this guy looks odd and is, kind of in an interesting but weird way. And he sort of started to see Potter as more his toy, like his object of pleasure. And then that's what he went with to get into character for the role, which I thought was absolutely fascinating. I don't know if poor Potter Smith knew any of this until they were interviewed years later for it. But
to me, the fact that in 1971, the only people that were seen on screen that were gay were really, really camp, and they had the kind of, hello, sailor, all that kind of stuff. And you would, around this time, there would be like comedy shows like Morecambe and Wise, where the two characters would sleep together. That Ernie and Bert would sleep in the same bed and stuff like that, Sesame Street. And it was never open that anyone was gay. And in a lot of in Morecambe and Wise's case and Bert and Ernie's case, they weren't gay. So in this, to see two characters that turned out to be gay when they weren't sort of acting camp, I think is quite forward thinking. So fair play to the producers for that.
On the flip side, obviously, if you are gay and you watch this film in 1971 and discover that the only people representing your leaning are the weird, creepy villains, you might also not be the happiest. So you've got to take that into account as well.
But John, we've had to deal with that for years, in the sense that, we've had to deal with the fact that many Asian people on screen have always been villains, or they've been sort of business people or something like that. It's just what we have to deal with. And we just have to deal with the kind of work that's available to us.
Fair play.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So then we get the gun barrel sequence, and then we get Connery tearing his way through a bunch of really poor looking. I mean, they look like the live version of the dummies from Team America World Police, to be fair, especially the one in Cairo, who does not look like an Egyptian at all. He just looks like some sort of Bengali stand-in that they found and said, "Here, put a fez on, you're Egyptian." He eventually finds his way to this beach where there's this lady sunbathing, and he starts questioning her, where's Blofeld, and then whips her bikini top off and starts strangling her with it. So it is quite brutal. And then he does get to where Blofeld is apparently holed up, and then we see what's his name? Is it Charles Gray?
Yeah.
Charles Gray is back, which is what confused John when we were watching You Only Live Twice, because John remembered Charles Gray from this film as Blofeld, and that's why you thought he was Blofeld in You Only Live Twice initially. So they basically rehired the actor and cast him as Blofeld in this. So there's a series of masks, and I wasn't sure what was going on. I thought Blofeld was undergoing plastic surgery to maybe explain why he looked different to Telly Savalas or something. But that's not the case. He's basically, in inverted commas, he's cloning himself and using his henchmen and changing them to his likeness. But Bond thinks that he's found him in the surgeon's lab or whatever it is, which basically looks like a mud spa, and promptly offs him. And I think it's at this bit where John sent me a picture of his scribbled note saying, "Is this surreal?" or something, didn't you?
Yeah, the whole thing is just, it's like a pantomime, isn't it? It's like what is going on? And you talk about about the helicopter blowing up. The special effects in this are absolutely the worst thing I've seen in years, and that's
awful.
Because the poor special effects people had their budgets massively slashed so they could pay Sean Connery, and I kid you not, 1971, $1.235 million.
It was
to get him back.
A record-breaking deal.
So $1.235 million in 1971. Times that by 1,300, and that's how much that money can buy now. Think about that for a second. That is a lot of money.
It's huge.
How much is that then? Is that like 130 million?
135 million. It's like ridiculous for one actor for one film. And it's just...
Yeah.
It boggles the mind. It really does.
And at the time, he was living in the UK, but the Labour government at the time had increased the income tax for people earning over a certain amount to 70%, and it massively hurt his tax bill. And it was around this time he moved to Monaco.
Oh, yeah. Makes sense.
Yeah. So he pushed for the film because of that to be made in America. And also Cubby Broccoli had a relationship with Howard Hughes. And so there was the opportunity to use Las Vegas as a massive set. So as a favour to Cubby, Howard Hughes basically shut Las Vegas down for 5 nights so that they could film there, which is quite something.
It's quite a big thing, yeah.
But Vegas themselves, when they were initially asked about it, they thought that Bond's being filmed in Vegas was actually a good thing, because obviously by this time the franchise was, I mean, it was probably about the biggest thing of the 60s, right? But the producers have been searching for a new actor to replace Lazenby. So Lazenby was originally signed to he had the option for 7 films, or they signed him for 7 films, but after the first one and all the problems, they didn't want him back, and he, at the advice of his agent, didn't go back. So the whole of 1970 was spent trying to find a new actor. And it's amazing when you look at the list of people that they considered. They were looking for an American initially. So they went to Clint Eastwood, they went to Burt Reynolds, they went to Adam West.
Can you imagine? Can you imagine if he'd been Bond?
He'd have been the perfect pseudo-American step in to Roger Moore if Roger Moore had followed straight after.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did they go to Tom Selleck?
No, they didn't go to Tom Selleck.
Oh, right.
Yeah, I mean, Tom Selleck, there's a story there with Indiana Jones, because he passed that over, didn't he? And it went to Harrison Ford.
Yeah.
So, and then they still couldn't get Roger Moore, because Roger Moore was tied up for another season of, I think it was either The Saint or
The Saint. It was The Saint.
Or might have been The Persuaders, actually. I think it was The Persuaders, John, yeah. I used to watch that when I was a kid, though.
So did I.
Yeah, and The Saint as well. I used to watch the reruns when I was
Tony
little.
Curtis was the other one, wasn't he? It was Tony Curtis.
Tony Curtis was in The Persuaders, yeah.
So they settled... So the producers decided that they were going to go for someone who was little known. And so they went for John Gavin, who played Caesar in Stanley Kubrick's Spartacus. And in January 1971, now you've got to consider the film was released in December. So this puts the time frame into sharp focus and probably explains a lot of what we see on film in the following 2 hours. But they signed his contract in January 1971. Now, and they thought it was a done deal. Now, at the same time, at United Artists, who were financing all of this, a guy called David Picker was in deep conversation with Sean Connery without telling the producers. And he was manoeuvring to get Connery back because they'd seen what had happened with On Her Majesty's Secret Service. I think it was the lowest grossing Bond film to date. They didn't want to repeat that mistake. So they wanted the director of Goldfinger back, and they wanted Connery back as well. And so they're the ones that offered him the $1.25 million deal. And they promised him that it would be a shorter shooting schedule. And they promised him that they would get filming moved to America, so it would solve his income tax problem, and also that they would get him access to all the golf courses out there, because that's pretty much what Connery wanted to do, was just basically play golf in his spare time.
Did they also promise him that he could date both the female leads at the same time?
I don't know. He dated Lana Wood, didn't he?
He dated both of them.
Oh, he did? Oh, wow. Because I thought Jill St. John was with Robert Wagner.
Eventually, yeah. But at one point he was seeing both of them during the filming.
Oh, wow. What a cad.
Yeah.
So then all of this came out in the wash, and the producers had to let Gavin go, but they'd signed him to a pay or play deal, so they were able to just terminate it, and he left the project. He actually became ambassador to Mexico.
He actually got paid the full amount for that, despite not being Bond as well.
They actually paid him off.
Oh yeah.
Oh wow. Okay.
Gavin was paid the full salary.
Wow. The interview I saw with the producers, they didn't say that.
Well, apparently Albert Broccoli insisted that Gavin be paid the full salary, which is the contract called. But that, I mean, I could be wrong on that. I've read this somewhere. It could be false information.
Yeah.
I will try.
I mean, you can see where the costs are starting to spiral. I mean, Connery didn't want. There's a great John. If you've got the iTunes version of this,
yes, I've seen the deleted scenes.
Yeah, have you seen the interview with him, the BBC archive interview?
No, I haven't watched that one yet.
It's worth a watch. It's really interesting. I'll see if when I edit this episode together, I can actually put it in, because it's only 5 minutes so that you lot can listen to it. But Connery basically, the interviewer says, "You didn't want to come back as Bond, did you?" I mean, it was well known by then that he didn't want to do it ever again. And, Connery says, "Yeah, I didn't. I don't need the money. I don't need hundreds of thousands of dollars or whatever. But the reason that he came back was on the promise that the salary he got paid, he at the time was trying to start a new charity in Scotland, and it was the Scottish International Education Trust. And with $1.25 million, it meant that he felt that much investment would mean that the trust could not fail. So he donated every single penny of it to that. By this time, he'd obviously invested the money he'd earned from the other Bond films, and he was doing other movies as well. He'd invested wisely. He was involved with property. He co-owned a business that sold second-hand cars in the East End of London. He was on the board of a bank in Scotland as well. And this is at the ripe old age of 41. So he's still really young when he makes this film. And he's doing really well. And money's just not really... he was putting any money he earned thereafter into other philanthropic stuff and trying to get Scottish independence and build Hadrian's Wall again. So yeah, there we go. But then they eventually moved filming back to the UK for a portion of it, because there was another tax loophole.
Probably
Pinewood Studios, yeah. Because there was a tax loophole where the profits of the film, they got a tax rebate which would cover the salary that they were paying him. So there was a lot of this nonsense going on, and the amount of time that took, they couldn't start didn't start filming until April. Finished filming around, I think, September. So this was like 5 months 5 months shoot schedule for an international project, which probably explains why the special effects are so rubbish, and a lot of the other stuff in the film as well. So there we go. But are we happy that Connery came back for this one?
I think so. I mean, what's the alternative? There was this other guy, but what was the alternative, really?
Yeah, I mean, we didn't get a choice, but I mean, if you could wave a magic wand, Phil, if you could have had anyone for this film, would it have been Connery, or would you have gone for someone else?
I think at the time I probably would have gone for Connery, yeah.
Do you know, Phil, Michael Gambon was actually asked to be Bond at one point.
Who was?
Did not know that.
And he turned it down, apparently, because he said he was in terrible shape and had tits like a woman. So fair play to Gambon for saying that about himself.
They also asked Ranulph Fiennes as well.
Oh, wow.
The Explorer.
Yeah, that would be weird.
Yeah. I mean, he is part of a very famous acting family, but he's not known for being the actor of the family. I think the most creative thing that he's done professionally is he was a poet as well, right? I mean, I say he's still alive today. But yeah, explorer, poet, writer. I've never seen actor on his CV. I think Joseph and Rafe are his cousins, aren't they? They're related somehow, anyway.
Yeah.
Anyway, moving on. We spent a lot of time on Connery. But anyway, Connery's back. He doesn't look like a 41-year-old, by the way, guys. He looks older than us. And we're slightly older than 41.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, just to fact check, John Gavin did get the full salary despite being the only Bond that was never a Bond.
Oh, wow. Okay. So yeah, while we're talking about the cast, well, let's talk about the cast then. So we didn't get much Lois Maxwell because she had some sort of dispute with the producers and so on. But in the end, they cut her back into the film and gave her that very short scene when Bond, goes off on the hovercraft to go to Amsterdam.
Hovercraft.
Yeah.
So good to see the hovercraft. It was so.
I've got to say, I love the way it harked back to the fact that it had the Intercity logo on it. It just reminded me of my childhood. It's like,
That's exactly the same. I remember going on hovercraft once or twice, and it was terrible because you never see out the windows because it's just all splashed, and the whole thing was,
I'm trying to think.
Bizarre when you do it.
I think I went on a hovercraft once when we went to France. I think on one occasion we did go on a hovercraft. But I was so young, I just don't remember what it was like. Noisy
and splashy and not much fun, really.
Yeah.
The only time I've seen a hovercraft before this film was in Jackie Chan's, I think it's Rumble in the Bronx or one of the other ones that he did.
Probably Police Story, something like that, isn't it?
It wasn't Police Story. It was one of the ones that was like a co-American straight. The ones that he did in like the kind of early 90s, I think.
Mm-hmm.
There was Rumble in the Bronx and there was another one. Who Am I or something. But anyway.
But yeah, probably Lois Maxwell, she was concerned about these little short sort of sequences she had to film for Bond were interrupting her other career. And it's like, I've got to go back and film sort of 10 minutes for a Bond film. And she'd actually dyed her hair a different colour for another thing she was in, which is why she's in that sort of port security garb with a hat on to hide her hair. But I think it was really nice to see her in the film. Her and Desmond Llewellyn.
She's not in it for very long, but
no,
the
she's not,
time she is in it, she's absolutely wonderful as always.
She is, but she asks Bond for a diamond ring, which it just seemed a little bit too soon after his wife had just died, if you ask me.
Yeah,
Moneypenny would do that,
But his wife,
not something she'd say.
Bit insensitive.
Again, you've got to remember, On Her Majesty's Secret Service doesn't exist in this timeline.
Okay.
Basically. As we then find out as the film progresses, because we're still waiting for mention of what happened to Tracy, and there is absolutely sweet FA about it.
Yeah.
It's crazy. We get our first... So let's go back to this mud bathing scene where we think that Blofeld has been killed. Because I was like, all bets are off in this bloody thing. He's already strangled someone with a bikini top to get information out of her. Then we got this crazy bastard that is changing people's faces to look like his own. Bond has now shoved Blofeld into a vat of boiling whatever it was.
Mashed potatoes, apparently.
It was mashed potatoes, yeah. Apparently that set absolutely reeked. Because obviously the potatoes went off. I feel sorry for the actor that got the
slid in
ton of it. Yeah, you could make a very a very strenuous Back to the Future link with crisping blubber, biff, horse manure, potatoes on. Yeah, it doesn't work though. But yeah, that sequence. Carolina laughed her head off when the guy goes inside Bond's jacket and the mouse trap in the holster or whatever.
How prepared can you be for that? It's hilarious. That's why it's such a surreal film.
He had a few gadgets in this film, didn't he?
Yeah,
but there was no Q branch sequence, which was so disappointing.
There was.
There was.
Very briefly there was, over the phone.
Yeah, exactly. But it wasn't a proper him getting the mousetrap thing and getting the fingerprint.
Listen carefully, Bond. Stop playing with that.
Yeah, the rappel gun as well, because we got a rappel gun for the first time since Goldfinger. So yeah, it was just absolutely bonkers. I don't know if this now takes the... No, I think that psychedelic scene in On Her Majesty's Secret Service is still the most bonkers scene so far in these films.
That or the Dancing Gypsy Girls.
Dancing Gypsy Girls is now become my most favourite sequence of any Bond film ever. It's absolutely freaking nuts. I'm going to have to go and watch that film again as a palate cleanser for this one. So, but then we get title sequence with the cat, which is the title sequence that my wife has paid the most attention to. It is largely agreed that it's one of the worst title sequences ever. It's quite lazy, but Carolina thinks it's the best title sequence ever of any movie ever made in motion picture history.
Because of the cat.
Yeah.
Okay.
What did we think? Look, the song is amazing, right?
Less scantily clad women. There was far less of the scantily clad women, which was a shame.
They only had one.
They only had one.
They only used one model for it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I mean,
it's all budget.
I just feel bad for the cat being sort of trolleyed out again. They threw him around in the first film, and he got terrified by bombs and things falling in that sort of volcanic set. And then they threw the cat again in this film, didn't they? He threw the cat at the wrong Blofeld. So no wonder he's looking decidedly annoyed in the title sequence.
The cat gets kicked as well, in Blofeld's apartment or whatever later in the film. Poor
cat.
Yeah, awful. Well, we don't know if because remember they got through two cats in the last one, in the one before. It was You Only Live Twice because one of the cats escaped at the beginning of filming in the volcano set.
They never found it, did they? You're right. Yeah,
never found exactly. So they had to replace him with another cat. So God knows how many cats they went through in this one. But then after that title sequence, Jules St. John is introduced to us as what's her face?
Tiffany Chase.
I can't remember her name.
Tiffany Chase.
Tiffany Chase, yeah. And she is the first American Bond girl. So good on her. The thing is now I will forever be comparing every Bond girl post on Her Majesty's to Diana Rigg, and she was rubbish in comparison. So,
but I think,
what did we think of Jill St. John?
I think that what they were looking for was Jane Fonda, because Jane Fonda at the time was probably the biggest actress at the time. She was probably the biggest sex symbol of 1971. She'd done Deliverance, she'd done Clue, she'd done They Shoot Horses, Don't They? But at the time, Jane Fonda was an activist for against the Vietnam War and she was an activist for many other things, including women's rights. So she wasn't really up for making films around this period. She was even actually, they wanted her for the lead in the film The Exorcist as well. But she just wasn't making films around this period. But it seemed to me that for this American audience, they wanted someone that could take on that Jane Fonda vibe. And I think she was a very cheap version of Jane Fonda, but she was a very pretty girl. But the way she was introduced came across as a very sort of assured, strong woman. And unfortunately, she didn't continue that way, which is a shame.
No, I mean,
I think your dog agreed, Bobby.
I love that dog so much, but I want to kill her so much at the same time.
I don't think
Jane Fonda was ever considered. Jill St. John, her agent, basically got her the role because they were going for someone else, and then her agent was friends with someone, and then suggested her, and then they put her in. But, I think she did well with what she was given. Yeah. But she started off, like, you're absolutely right, Phil. She started off as being quite sassy and quite a strong female lead, and then by the end of the film, she was basically the blueprint for a lot of the nonsense that went on in Gremlins 2: The New Batch. I'm thinking particularly of when she tries to fire the machine gun on the oil rig platform and then sort of falls off the edge with it.
That was quite a leap from Bond to Spielberg there. Goodness me.
Yeah, well, you know me. I'll leap all over the place all day long. This is what people come to this show for.
Jane Fonda and Faye Dunaway were all considered. So they did approach Jane Fonda for the film.
Oh, they did?
Yeah. I'm not sure how Faye Dunaway would have done, because she's quite a different vibe.
She's more of a villain, Faye Dunaway.
Yeah.
She's more the bad girl.
She a Superman villain?
She was in Supergirl. She was in Supergirl.
That's right, Supergirl.
Worst film, one of the worst films of all time.
I love that film.
Yes.
I love that film.
Awful. Watch it again and then tell me.
Okay.
I don't. Every time I watch it, I'm just mesmerised by Helen Slater. So I think it's awesome.
I had massive crush on her after that film for many
me
years.
too. Yeah.
That wasn't enough to keep me interested in the film.
I literally tried walking past factories with radiation in the hope of getting superpowers. She'd fall in love with me. That's how in love I'm with. Sorry, guys.
Oh, John.
That's an admission,
That's
isn't it?
So sweet. So let's move through the cast then, because going through the film in order has just gone out the window. So then our other Bond girl, because obviously Jill St. John is really the kind of arch enemy, right? Because remember, we've got this 3 Bond girl sort of formula. Then we've got Lana Wood, Natalie Wood's sister, who plays Plenty O'Toole. This is where a lot of the jokes, a lot of the jokes didn't land for me as well in this film. I mean, I think they just about got away with it just because it was Connery. But I just don't think the jokes landed. I mean, when she says, "Hi, I'm Plenty" in the casino, and he says,
"Of course you are."
What does he say? Sure, of course you are.
Yeah.
But I think they should have just left it at that. There was no need for the, named after your father. Then I was like, I mean, what does that mean? But yeah, anyway, I mean, she apparently modelled her performance on a combination of Minnie Mouse and someone else. I can't remember who the other one was. I think so, yeah. But it just, again, it was so grating, even some of the lines they give Jill St. John. You killed James Bond? You can't kill James Bond. Now we got to get out of here before they come after us.
How does a fairly minor jewel thief or jewel dealer know anything about the great famous James Bond? They're in different circles, aren't they?
Man.
Surely.
I mean, right from the start, even when James Bond was saying, should we even be getting involved in, diamond smuggling? This is kind of outside of her, so she wouldn't know who James Bond is or Commander Bond.
Also, if you're known as the great James Bond, then surely you're the worst spy in the world because everyone knows who you are.
Exactly.
This has always confused me.
Yeah.
Always.
But I would also say about, the whole thing about going back to Plenty O'Toole, her role in it was in some way, to me, it felt like they were trying to sell Las Vegas to the rest of the world. It's like you could show up, act like you sort of know what you're doing on a craps table, and then, you could leave with a bit of money. So it teaches people how to play craps and basically lets you know that there'll be scantily clad girls that'll be willing to have sex with you if you tip them enough.
Well, Playboy models, because she modeled for Playboy, didn't she, as well?
Oh, did she?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But she was well endowed. Look, I'm just going to say it. We're all hot-blooded males here. I mean, it was really distracting. And I can't imagine what it would have been like for the audience of 1971. They must have been completely
your family and
mesmerised.
cousins, in your family house on that Sunday afternoon when you went to watch it together.
That, yeah. Well, I don't know because I was playing with cars, Matchbox cars, and I was waiting for. Oh no! Actually, my cousin had. We're going off on a tangent. Get ready. Hold on. Put your seatbelts on. My cousin had Starscream.
I had Starscream as well.
Yeah, and he was the coolest one because you got 2 Transformers in one because he opened up the cassette at the front and he had the little cassette that transformed into the little bird transformer, Decepticon.
Yeah.
And so I remember most of that afternoon was spent fighting over who was going to play with Starscream next because no one wanted Optimus Prime because it was boring.
Well, Starscream was a plane, not a cassette player.
Who was the one that had the cassette at the front?
He was. I've got it. I own it. He was the leader. I forget the guy's name, but he was the main.
Wasn't
in
Megatron.
The cartoons? Eventually, he turned into a gun, but initially, he was a cassette player with a panther and he had a panther and like a vulture thing that came out as tapes, didn't you? Do you remember? We are going on a tangent here now, aren't we?
Yeah, we are. We need to sort this out. My dad. I had my appendix out when I was 7. And while my cousin was getting the really cool Transformers, my dad bought me Inferno.
Oh.
Soundwave.
It was the fire engine. It was absolute shit. If you're going to get me... Like, your son could have died on the operating table and you buy him Inferno. I mean, come on, Dad. Seriously.
Well,
It's a bit like when your dad bought you that shit car that time.
Oh, yeah,
Phil,
for
when he
your
bought
eyes.
you the Citroen,
For your
Citroen
eyes only.
2CV or something.
Your eyes only,
exactly.
yes.
Rather than getting you the Lamborghini or whatever it was, the
that
Lotus.
was the car that he got me, and that's probably another reason why, Bond I was scarred from Bond, because I thought, is this kind of a memory of a shit toy that my dad got me,
So John's got this really cheeky look on his face.
He's going to get something.
He's gone into 8-year-old John. Oh, look, he's going to go and get something to show us.
Oh, man.
He might have found the car that he talked about a few episodes ago, actually. I wonder if he's retrieved it. This is going to be a treat.
What have you got?
You're going to have to edit this bit out, but...
Oh. No! Oh no, he's got, oh my God!
Yeah,
he's got the Transformer toy that my cousin had. Oh my God, 38 years ago.
It's a blaster, isn't it?
Yeah.
Right. You can hear it, the sound of it.
Wasn't he
I've had
called
this
Ghetto
years.
Blaster?
I don't know where the box is. It's probably worth more with the box, but see, look, his legs come down here.
Yeah.
He's called Soundwave. He was like,
Soundwave.
Again, one of the worst ones to get, because like, how does a cassette player get involved in the action,
Yeah.
But he was doing things like going into military bases, and people, soldiers were picking him up to play him, and he'd get moved into the secret area where all the plans were and things. And but the best bit was actually the cassette came out and turned into I've got the cat somewhere else, but this is like a bird that opened up as well.
Yeah.
Maybe he infiltrates nuclear bases with the codes to have false codes so that the nuclear weapons don't go off.
Well, there's another cassette that came with him, which was the marching band cassette that you could put in here as well.
Yes.
So trying to get back to Bond here.
Exactly. Yeah.
But yeah, Starscream was a plane. I remember that being like a F-16 or an F-15 Tomahawk plane. Because I was wanting to be Transformers. I think Bob has gone to get his Transformer now.
No, he's gone to put the dog to sleep.
Do you know what? I do own... I went to get Emily out of the room because she's barking like a stupid idiot. I do own a Transformer, and I'm not ashamed to say it, that I bought it about 6 or 7 years ago. That's the one. Yeah, that's the one. Why did I think that was cool? That one's rubbish. Why did I think it was so cool?
Well, what options did we have, Bobby?
The grass is always greener.
Yeah, this is true. I own a, I don't know, it's like a 1:8 or 1:6 scale Bumblebee.
Oh no!
From the new
I always
Transformers.
wanted Bumblebee. The Porsche.
No, Bumblebee from the new
Oh,
one.
he's the VW. Yeah.
No, he starts as a VW, doesn't he? But then he changes into a Camaro.
Mustang. Yeah.
He's a yellow Camaro.
What was the Porsche called? It's going to bug me now. Go down the rabbit hole. Transformers.
Jazz.
That's it. I always wanted Jazz. Always.
We've gone down this rabbit hole because it's more interesting. Transformers are more interesting than Diamonds Are Forever. I'm so sorry. Anyone who's listening, I've just killed Phil and John. Yes. Anyway, I think that's it. But this has been the worst episode of Tailoring Talk ever. we hit the bottom finally. 7 films in.
Let's talk about Tiffany Case's terrible fingerprint machine, please. I want to talk about how bad it was.
You take the lead, John. Go for it.
Because we got to that stage where we were talking about Tiffany Case, weren't we? We digressed to Lana Wood and Plenty O'Toole and the gratuitous boobs on the crap table scene. But let's talk about Tiffany's fingerprint gadget. Because Bond had to go as Peter Franks, didn't he, to sort of make the meet cute with him and Tiffany Case. And you're saying she's quite sassy and kind of confident in that first scene, but it's just the whole scene where she gets his fingerprints from his glass of scotch, whatever she served him, and it just I've never laughed so much in a Bond film as when she opened the cupboard and like she's got these two sort of like overhead projector screens, and she somehow managed to have the fingerprint on Data. And she takes a perfect fingerprint from the glass, and they're next to each other. They look exactly the same, and it's just the whole thing made me laugh so much.
It's the way that she just sort of like there's no cross scanning or anything. She just kind of looks at them, and
they
then
look
with
like
a sort
they
of
are the same.
Well, they do, but still, I mean, you could do some sort of overlaying or whatever.
Yeah.
But again, I'm just guessing everything in this film was driven by budget considerations. Because then you come on to a lot of the explosion special effects and things later on, and they literally look like they were done by a 4-year-old child. Sorry, Phil, you wanted to say something.
No, I was just going to go back to the element about Tiffany Chase in terms of, how she was going to basically get the diamonds from where they were to where it needed to be, and how they were hidden. And they couldn't figure out where the diamonds were until they looked up at this rather tacky chandelier in the apartment.
And then
I
it
thought
was like,
Delbo
we've
was
got
going to drop on the floor at one point. Sorry.
Yeah, no. And then they had to work out how to shove that chandelier up Peter Frank's butt.
Elementary, my dear Watson.
Yeah, exactly. But just before that, Peter Franks, who Bond kills in quite a brutal fight, because they're both actors are quite big guys. I mean, well over 6 foot, quite broad. And I thought it was actually quite a neat choice of the directors to put them in a fight in that very small elevator. Because, I mean, Sean Connery, when he swings his fist at the start of the fight, his elbow goes straight through the glass panel on the side. And, in the first microsecond, I'm thinking, oh, that was a bit stupid. But then I realised, actually, no, as the fight went on, it was actually quite impactful because there was not much space for these two to really throw punches and kicks and stuff. So it was quite brutal. So I thought that was really, really well done. I quite enjoyed that. But what did you think of the elevator thing? I felt sorry for that beautiful elevator, though, because it was gorgeous and they just totally trashed it.
I'm not sure that it was originally glass coated. Maybe they added those glass panels in for the effect of the fight, because they must have been sugar glass.
Yeah, I mean, I've never seen one of those elevators glass coated. They do still exist in the West End and older offices in Harley Street and Wimpole Street and so on. But I thought that fight was really, really good. Phil?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that it was amazing how they were able to find lots of things to actually hit each other with in that small space, but somehow they managed to find extra things to hit each other with in an area that doesn't seem to have anything, which was quite interesting. And then, just at the very last minute, he managed to find what was it? One of them had an axe that he just found on the wall, and then
crowbar.
Oh no, crowbar.
Yeah.
Well, why is there a crowbar on the wall?
Well, it was part of the fire safety bit where you had the crowbar so you could smash a window to get out, and then the fire hydrant or the fire extinguisher was next to the crowbar.
Yeah. So yeah.
So they, I mean, again, anyone who's listening to this has got no freaking idea what part of the film we're in or what the hell's going on, but we're smuggling diamonds, people. And the diamonds at the moment are in a chandelier, and they've got a dead body on the floor, which they're going to use to smuggle the diamonds to wherever it's going I think it's going to America, because they're in Amsterdam currently. So Bond and Tracy, what's her name? No,
Tiffany.
not Tracy. Tiffany.
Tiffany Chase. Yeah.
Tiffany Jeweler Diamonds. That's how I remember it. So off camera, we don't see this happening, but obviously it's implied that they then pluck the diamonds off this chandelier and shove it up the butt of Peter Frank's dead body, and then that's put in a coffin and gets shipped to wherever. And at customs in the USA, Bond is greeted by a customs agent who tells everybody else to bugger off, and it turns out it's Felix Leiter from the CIA, who's played by, now I think this is the 5th actor that's played him, maybe the 4th.
Norman Burton, the actor's called.
Okay. And the coffin goes to the funeral home because Bond is met by 3 really dodgy-looking people.
It's the Blues Brothers, isn't it? It was the Blues Brothers. I'm sure they just sort of wandered onto set and said...
you mean like the kind of Chicago gangster version of the Blues Brothers?
We've got a full tank of gas and we're wearing shades and we'll just take Bond off with us.
Yeah.
Hey, Bond, we're going to take you to the funeral home now.
But it's
Come on, son, get in front. Sit in between us.
I think they are
Still so surreal.
It's much safer. It's much more comfortable up front, you see.
But they're in Vegas, so I mean, it's run by gangsters, isn't it? So that makes sense that they would have that kind of character there. It's probably run by the mafia, so they've probably got those sorts of characters to do it. I got a brother.
Yeah, well, before that, when Bond is on the plane, the camera sort of pans past Bond to the curtains at the back separating the compartment, and you just see what's his face, the creepy weirdo-looking one of the two,
Mr. Wint,
Mr. Kid.
Mr. Wint. You just see his eye through the curtain, and it is so creepy. I'm just going to pop in the chat for you guys here. Really, I can't wait until we start videoing these because it'll be more fun. But it is so creepy because they then obviously are waiting for him at the funeral home. So Bond, there's some thing with the diamonds where he's put fake ones in the dead body because they cremate it and then bring the diamonds to him. And then Mr. Wint and the other one knock him on the back of the head, stick him in a coffin so that Bond can be cremated. Yeah. By this time I was kind of losing interest, so one of you needs to take over. but I mean, the sequel, I did kind of get my attention again when Bond was going through the cremation thing and it was literally about to set him on fire and it was getting really hot in there. Because then I was thinking, how the hell is he going to get out of this?
Yeah.
Get out of it he does, because they realise the diamonds are fake, so they pull him out of there to, obviously get him to go and retrieve the real ones, I think.
Yeah.
And that's where he then goes to Vegas.
That's where I wrote down, this film is surreal. The whole thing, just surreal.
Yeah, it didn't make any sense because, when they would have retrieved the diamonds, they would have put it in the actual urn, so they would have seen at that point that they were phony. They wouldn't have even given them to him. They would have realised at that point that they were fake. So why go through the process of actually doing it? And then they've already given them, and then all of a sudden they discover that they're fake rather than actually examining them in the first place when they'd actually burned it in the first place. It made no sense.
Yeah, and also if they were fake, why didn't they sort of get at least a little bit singed or damaged or whatever? Because they're not real diamonds.
Well, I thought they'd just been very well cleaned after being, burnt out the body. It was very quick, wasn't it? Really quick process. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. It's literally seconds because the coffin goes in and then the guy comes out literally straight away with an urn and hands it to him. That's the problem with this film. It's so hard to talk about.
Nightmare. Yeah.
Yeah, absolute nightmare. So then we end up in Vegas, and now I can finally talk about some clothes because Bond turns up in a white tux. And it's actually the kind of the white sort of similar style to the Casino Royale one because it's got the double-breasted lapels on the single-breasted jacket. I'm glad to see that the pleat ratio on the shirts has been reduced after the last film.
Yeah,
the tailor was Anthony Sinclair for this jacket apparently.
The
wardrobe master was Ray Beck. So. Did you see the Sammy Davis Jr. deleted scene, Bobby?
I haven't seen the deleted scene. I know about it. So
there's a scene with Sammy. He's at the table and he's not doing very well, but he's talking to Willa White's sort of Saxby, isn't it? His sort of minion for the owner of the or the kind of the manager of the casino, Albert Saxby. And in this scene with Sammy Davis Jr., basically they're both chatting, and in comes Bond, and Sammy Davis Jr., who's he's quite a fashionable guy. He was one of the Rat Pack. The Rat Pack wasn't he at the time? Yeah. Turns around to Saxby and says, "Oh my God, he looks like he should be on top of a wedding cake." So he properly takes the piss out of Bond as he walks in his white dinner jacket. But I thought, it's classic Bond, isn't it? Really.
Well, here's the thing, right? And Phil, you come in on this because you're the gambling person. But Bond sticks out like a sore thumb in this casino because everybody's pretty much dressed quite casually, like they've literally just come from a burger joint or something, and they're playing slot machines, and some are playing baccarat, and some are playing blackjack and whatever. and Bond is the only person who's in a tux. He sticks out like a sore thumb. It's basically the modern day equivalent of that is basically me if I went to see you playing poker, because I would stick out like a sore thumb, because I would put my Skyfall replica tuxedo on to go and visit you.
Do you know, I've seen some early footage of the World Series of Poker that was played at Binion's Horseshoe Casino around 1974, and they did all look like normal people. They dressed in normal like clothes, T-shirts, trousers. It was only a couple of players that would wear the proper suits and the actual cowboy hats. So it was Amarillo Slim that would wear the suit and he would wear the cowboy hat. Generally, though, in America, unfortunately, people tend to wear casual clothes to go to the casino. And it's only in Europe where the insistence, particularly in the 60s and 70s, that you had the insistence of wearing a suit, shoes, jacket, and in some cases a tie. And I think they still have that rule in Crockford's, which is in Curzon Street, I believe. I believe you still have to wear a tie there because I think the membership there is, last time I checked, was about £10,000 a year. And the idea of that is to keep certain people out of that casino.
Keep the riffraff
out. Yeah. So you have the oil billionaires and the Chinese businessmen will always play there. And I believe you do have to wear smart clothes there. But in Vegas, it's always been casual because it's hot there. It's very hot. You know, so in that time, they probably didn't have much in the way of air conditioning. Maybe they did, I don't know. But it was very much a place where you could just relax and not think about stuff.
Yeah.
So,
thank you for that, Phil. I would just like to say at this point, just give a little, whatchamacallit, but the Tailoring Talk podcast does not condone gambling. Please gamble responsibly. Please ask the taxpayer's permission before you make any phone calls. And when the fun stops, stop. Sponsored by 888.com, poker, play online and do whatever. But obviously, so it seemed that we then get Lana Wood's introduction as Plenty O'Toole. I mean, she was quite striking, actually. Natalie Wood was very attractive.
She was.
Her sister was very attractive. Very attractive lady. Very tragic. Her dying in the way that she...
More on that later.
Yeah. Robert Wagner, haven't they reopened the inquiry up?
I don't know. The last I read, they closed the case, but he was. The whole Jill St. John, Lana Wood feud lasted for many, many years. Many, many years. Because Lana Wood thought that this sort of rivalry between her and Jill St. John and her husband, Robert Wagner, may have been the cause of the death of her sister, but I don't know. It's never been concluded.
Yeah. There's an interesting documentary on Netflix about it.
Oh, really? What's it called?
I don't remember what it's called, but I did watch it. It's it came out 2019, and it drills down into the evidence, and it questions some of the people that were on the boat at the time.
Yeah. You see, here's another continuity thing, right? Because they then go up to the hotel room, and he takes her dress off, and then she's going to the bathroom to freshen up. And then he goes into the main room, and he's about to undo his tie, and he's greeted with the thugs from the funeral home, who have got him at gunpoint, and obviously a conversation takes place. The other two go to the bathroom, and they drag Plenty out, and she's basically topless, so she's trying to cover up her modesty. And then they just go and throw her out of the window. More on that in a minute. But then after they go, he then goes to the bedroom and Tiffany's lying in the bed waiting for him.
I think she was already there before the other couple came up.
I know, but isn't that weird?
Well, she's very keen. Look, she's very keen to get the diamonds. These diamonds were valued, what, $50,000?
They're 50,000 carats. Right. So it would have been.
Hang on, is she working with the funeral home people at this point?
Yeah.
Is she in cahoots with them?
Well, I think she's in cahoots with herself. I think she just wants to see this through, and she's shacking up with Bond to find out the location of the diamonds. I mean, she gets the fringe benefits for doing it, but when she's actually in flagranti delicto with Bond, she kind of starts sort of nuzzling his neck, but you can see in her eyes she's like, "Oh, I'm going to be a bit more calculating about this. Where are the jewels? How can I get him to confess where the jewels are?" So I don't think she's in cahoots with anyone. I think she's almost gone independent here. Just wants to see it through. I don't know. What do you think, Phil?
I think she's probably got loads of contacts all over the place. Someone who deals with those sorts of diamonds and that kind of money would have contacts all over the place. So I think she is comfortable in Vegas, clearly. She knew her way around, and she probably knew who to speak to probably get the information that she needed to find where Bond was. Or in this case, Peter Franks. If she hadn't already figured out that it was Bond.
But she's not working with she's not working with the funeral guys. Let's assume that John's right. So she's already in the room the whole time that's going on. So imagine that the funeral guys weren't in the room, and he's gone up with plenty, and he's going to nail her. But she's waiting in the bed. So then what does she do? Does she just get involved in a threesome? You see what I mean?
It's Vegas,
such
mate.
a
It's Vegas.
mind fuck.
It's Vegas.
It's Vegas, baby.
It's Vegas, Anything goes, I mean, my favourite line of that scene was the henchmen throw the poor plenty down into the pool. And Bond says, "Oh, good shot!" And he goes, "Well, I didn't know there was a pool down there. I thought that was brilliant."
And then Connery elbows him.
I loved. That was funny.
So that they didn't obviously throw her out of the window. What they did is they built a sort of, I think it was about a 6-foot high platform by the pool, and then she was then put onto the stuntman's shoulders, and then he basically had to sort of kneel down. And then the idea was that he would then just sort of propel her up into the air, and then they would just sort of film that shot of her falling into the pool.
Tough
She
work,
was not.
Someone's got to do it.
Yeah, exactly. She was not put in danger at that stage, but more on that in a bit. So then he basically does it with what's her face. So that is on our little, because Alex isn't here, but on our sexometer, that's number
Shag
one.
counter.
Shag
Yeah,
counter.
that's number one.
Yeah, that's number one.
I actually have that in my notes as well, Bobby, written down here. Shag count, number 1.
Okay. Have you got any more on that tally?
I don't think so.
No.
I think maybe Tiffany gets another tumble towards the end of the film later on, after the scene on the boat with the Winton kid. I think maybe there.
Yeah. But
So
we don't
actually
really...
quite Bond's in quite control of himself in this film almost, really, isn't he?
Well, I don't know, because when he meets Bambi and Thumper later, you see the look on his face, because he thinks, oh, I'm going to get into a bit of a threesome here, and then they start kicking the shit out of him. He's still got that little sex pest kind of thing carrying on over from Goldfinger when he tries to get in Pussy's knickers, and what was the other film? You Only Live Twice. Well, I won't be needing those then. Shoving the oysters away. So I don't think he's reformed in this, John. I think it's just there's less opportunity. So then we go to Vegas, where the CIA is surveilling the circus, and this was a real circus. I mean, everything that you see there was absolutely real. It wasn't stunt people or whatever. I mean, they were just happy to be on camera in a Bond film and just put a show on for them. The guy who gives Tiffany a clue, where he holds a sign up at her.
Yeah.
Is that Yaphet Kotto?
I don't
The actor.
think so.
He was. I think it is. John, someone look that up. What
would the character be called, do you think?
Croupier.
I'm looking.
Blackjack Croupier.
Well, he was a croupier, but the name on his tag is Frank. I think it's just Frank 5005. But I'm going to put his picture in. I think it's Yaphet Kotto, a very young, who we would then later see in, I think, Live and Let Die, maybe.
Was he a crap stealer?
No, it was Blackjack he was dealing.
He was doing
I don't know. I know who you mean. I mean, I've got E.J. Tex Young as crap stealer. I've got Vincent Wong as casino groupier.
It's definitely not Winston Wong. I mean, this guy's as
I can't find who else it could be.
African American as they come.
Yeah. No. We've got Jack Ross, casino staff, uncredited.
Maybe he's not credited.
Maybe he's not credited.
Yeah, I'm going to try and look that up.
Yeah, but he tells her to try the water balloons.
Yes, that's right. So she goes. We have that whole sequence where she then goes to the game with the water balloons.
Impressed, is she?
She's not impressed at all, and she's not even making an effort. And the kid next to her absolutely goes off on one. It's like, I think it's Jacob Rees-Mogg, actually.
I say, that's not fair. Man who's considerably aware of what unfairness is, Jacob Rees-Mogg, obviously.
I know. Yeah, sorry. Okay, anyway, we won't get political on this podcast.
Move on. Yeah.
So moving on, then Bond. So she then goes back to her home.
Well, you've missed a bit out, Bobby. Bobby, you missed quite something I found I thought was quite tricky. And was that scene where they had that black lady turning into a gorilla? Yes. I found that quite dubious, if you ask me. How they got around that, I have no idea.
It's like we would have thought in this day and age, right? On Her Majesty's Secret Service with the whole
the dinner party,
bananas, the Chinese girl eats rice. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Dinner party.
They might have just looked at that and thought, do you know what? That was maybe a bit too on the nose. But in this one, they're just like, hey, do you know what we did in the script for On Her Majesty's Secret Service? Let's just do more of that and turn this black woman into a gorilla. Fucking hell! Like, seriously. Terrible. I'm so sorry for the language, people listening, but I mean, it warrants it. It is. Yeah, it was very... I think that's why I didn't bother screenshotting that bit, because I was so disgusted.
Yeah.
And I know we say of its time, etc., but there are some things that you just think, come on, I mean, that is just... It's too much. So yeah,
can I
so
just
then
ask,
yeah.
I'm not going to go on about the last scene, but can I just say, does anybody else not feel this is the most convoluted story about a bunch of diamonds you've ever seen?
Yes.
Yeah. But you see, here's the problem, right? So towards the end of On Her Majesty's Secret Service, when that was filming, and I think by the end of filming, they knew that Lazenby was a done deal, because as far as he burned all his bridges with them, they couldn't stand him. His agent was telling him not to do another one. So, and then obviously he'd kind of set his reputation for the worse. But Richard Maybaum was basically drafting scripts for Diamonds Are Forever, and he was sort of going by the source material, but also trying to carry on the story from On Her Majesty's. And this originally, his intention was for this to be what I wanted it to be, which was a revenge thriller. But then they decided to kind of go away from that when they were recasting the role, and then sort of circle back round to the book again. But then what happened was the script that they came up with, the producers decided that it wasn't exciting enough, because by this time there were a lot of spy things going on. There was, I think, The Man from U.N.C.L.E. was out at that time with David McCallum and Robert. No, not Robert Wagner.
Robert Vaughn?
Robert Vaughn. Robert Vaughn,
yeah.
And then you had The Sane, and you had The Professionals, both of which were very successful shows. And then the Rat Pack had their own spy thing going on, and there were a number of other spy movies out. And so they sort of decided that something else needed to happen, because the script was too generic of a typical spy thriller. And then Cubby Broccoli goes to sleep one night and has a nightmare about his best mate, Howard Hughes. And in the nightmare, he's standing on the balcony outside Howard Hughes' penthouse apartment, and he sees Hughes through the window with his back to him. So in the nightmare, Cubby calls out to him and calls out Sam and knocks on the window, because Sam is what Howard was known to his closest friends. And the guy turns around, and it's not Howard Hughes, it's an imposter. So can you now see where this is going? So that's where so then they decided to bring in the character of Willard White, or whatever his name is, who's the industrialist, and then come up with the plot that Blofeld will kidnap him and hold him to ransom, so that he could then get all the diamonds to then build this space weapon to then try and start a nuclear war bidding race or whatever.
Willard Wright was played by Jimmy Dean, who was actually an employee of Howard Hughes as well, wasn't he? So,
yeah, exactly. So it's Cubby having some weird, probably LSD or marijuana-induced dream about his mate, and this is where it all kind of... We've ended up here today with possibly the worst Bondathon episode of Tailoring Talk so far. We had to hit up. You know, the funny thing was, right, I was saying to Phil last night, because he called me after, and I said to Phil, you know, I knew that On Her Majesty's Secret Service was my least favourite one so far, but I didn't think I would have to wait this long for it to get off the bottom of the list.
Yeah. And
I thought I'd have to wait a little while for that to happen.
And you probably sacrificed the England final for this, to watch this, didn't you?
I did.
Like,
yeah, I watched the first half.
Oh, I watched it. It was cracking game. Really good.
Yeah. So anyway, then what's her face? Tiffany goes back to her house, and Bond is already waiting for her. Interesting little fact. Do you know whose house that was that they shot at?
Howard Hughes' house?
No, it wasn't. It was Kirk Douglas's house. So pulled another favour from a mate there. But you know, so they have some sort of conversation, and then she notices that Plenty is actually in the swimming pool. She's been anchored down and drowned because the gangsters or whatever mistook Plenty for Tracy.
Tiffany.
And then Tiffany. Yeah, sorry. I'm still hung on Diana Rigg. Sorry. I make no... Actually, do you know what? I'm not even going to apologise for that. So yeah, so then I think at this stage she sort of realises that the stakes are a bit higher than her own sort of selfish wants or whatever. So this is where she sort of agrees to team up with Bond and help him. Now, Lana Wood had a bit of a hairy experience filming that, because that was her tied to the bottom of that swimming pool. But what they did is they sort of anchored her down, and they left a little bit. So what she was meant to do was sort of crouch down a little bit under the water so that she could just straighten up and her head would be above water. But while they were filming, the swimming pool was on a slant. The bottom of it was on a slant. Bless you, Philip.
Yeah.
I won't edit that sneeze out. It was more fun than what was happening in the film at this point. And so what was happening while they were filming, they didn't notice that it was on a slant, and as the water was kind of moving, it kept sort of moving her down the slope. So for her, the water was getting deeper and deeper. And by the end of it, she basically couldn't straighten up to get her head above. So she started to drown. And then luckily someone noticed, and then they went in and plucked her out. But yeah, she got quite scared at one point and thought they might not notice in time, and she'd end up drowning down there. Yeah.
Didn't know that.
Filming in the 70s, hey?
Yeah.
Safety goes out the window. So there we go. And then the next sequence is Tracy basically taking Bond. Tiffany, sorry. I'm going to keep doing it, aren't I? This is going to be a bitch to edit. To the sort of that... Is that it's not the NASA training, it's the laboratory, or White's kind of technical laboratory sort of place. And this is where we do get a sort of what I thought was quite a sort of nice little scene, because Connery Bond has to I've been up since 4 a.m, people. So Connery Bond. Shit. Phil, can you take over, please?
So James Bond goes to this plant, and it's at this point he befriends someone who is responsible for radiation shields. And apparently this one little disc that you just put on your pocket is designed to protect you from all the radiation that comes through this.
Phil, I don't think it protects you. I think, because I've visited a nuclear power station in my time. It's designed to tell you when you've had too much.
Right.
So it will change colour. So it's more an indicator rather than a shield. Does that make sense?
Well, they described it as radiation shield, so that's not what they do.
Well, no. What they do is the little coloured discs, they react to the radioactivity and they change colour, and then you get like a bit like a litmus, a gradation scale. So when it starts going from green to orange to red, basically just get out if it goes orange before it goes red.
Right. Okay.
So the shield is the name of the safety process, really.
I see.
Rather than it being like this sort of Captain America shield.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
All right. So this is where they go, and he manages to befriend this guy, and he pretends to be someone checking radiation shields to get inside the domain where the tape is found.
Was it the tape, or I know that the Doctor was there. He's the guy that was basically going to be building that satellite.
Dr. Metz.
Dr. Metz, yeah. He was going to be building the satellite, wasn't he, with the laser. That was going to start blowing the laser. Because they've got all the diamonds out on the bench as well, haven't they? But yeah, Bond, and this is where I love Connery's portrayal of Bond, because these are the moments when he gets the humour right. He really does get it right. Yeah. It's like I'm checking radiation shields or whatever, and the guy's like, "Get out of here, you annoying man!" And eventually Connery goes, and then the other guy comes in, and they realise that it's a ruse, and so they go after him, and then that's when he gets in the moon buggy to escape.
Can I just say one thing? That as a teacher, this does confirm my theory, by the way, that if you walk around with a clipboard and look like you're busy, no one bothers you.
Yeah,
it's brilliant. I can recommend that to a lot of people.
Yeah, totally. You will, if you go to tailoringtalk.com/clipboards, you'll be able to buy your very own Tailoring Talk clipboard to be able to wander into schools. And actually, I take that.
No, Bobby, don't condone that, please. Thank you. So the moon landing stuff I found interesting, because at the time in the 70s, wasn't there a big sort of conspiracy theory that the moon landing was all filmed? So this is kind of little poke or little joke about that. They actually were filming it and not actually doing it for real.
That's what I thought. I picked up on that, but I thought the actual conspiracy about the moon landings was much later than that. So I just thought that this kind of was maybe the catalyst or where it started from. But you're saying that this actually, people had already thought that there was conspiracies about the moon landings.
I think so, yeah.
Even in 1971.
Yeah, I think so.
Well, that's interesting.
Well, it's like the flat Earth people, isn't it? People just don't believe what the evidence in front of them, so they have to come up with this crackpot theory.
I think I think those people just want attention. They don't actually believe in flat Earth. They just want attention.
All right. Everyone loves a crackpot theory, don't they? That's the trouble.
There must be people that really genuinely do believe in flat Earth.
I don't think so. Yeah. I know one person who's a flat earther, and he does it just to get attention on Facebook. And he actually got banned from Facebook because he was so hot on this whole flat Earth thing, and they believed that he was promoting propaganda, so they banned him from Facebook because all he ever did was talk about flat Earth. He wanted was attention, basically.
What do flat earthers really? Do they literally believe that Earth is like a rectangle just floating in space?
No, they believe it's like it's round, but it's kind of flat round.
With a wall where the aliens
like a disc.
Yeah, like a disc.
Yeah, around the edge. Right. So the moon landings were seen. The biggest conspiracy theories about the moon landings, and there's a lot of people who believed between 1969 and 1972 that they were faked, and that the 12 Apollo astronauts didn't actually walk on the moon. Some people look at sort of the photographs and find evidence, but obviously we've got more evidence because we've got real rocks and things, and later high definition photographs show evidence of the footmarks on the moon and so on. But I find it fascinating. 40 years of conspiracy theories. It just some people still believe they were fake now. I just think it's fascinating.
But this was very soon after the actual landing on the moon. So I think since the film was made, we had actually landed on the moon. So then they wanted to probably pay homage to that fact in this film. But then they brought out the buggy, and in Vegas, it's like 36, 37, 38 degrees in this thing with this dome. He would have been absolutely sweating buckets driving around that terrain, but he comes out, not a bead of sweat on him. Looks crisp.
Yeah. To be fair, he probably wasn't actually driving that thing for most of that sequence. The moon buggies didn't exist in 1971. It wasn't a thing. They came a little bit later. I think in 72, 73. So that was actually built by the same automobile customization company that also built the Green Hornet's Black Beauty car. And they also built the Monkey Mobile. You remember the monkeys? Come on, we watched the monkeys when we were
I remember
kids.
the monkeys, yeah. Wasn't it a beach buggy, the Monkey Mobile?
Whatever the Monkey Mobile was, they built it. Yeah. And they built that thing.
Cool.
And the tyres kept breaking on it. So it just kept malfunctioning all the time. So in the end, they just had to put inflatable tyres to help the thing to just kind of keep going long enough to film that action sequence.
It was this sequence, Bobby, onwards, I think. This sequence and the sequence later on with the police cars in Las Vegas, where I just thought I was watching a Cannonball Run, to be honest.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Although that was 10 years later. The Cannonball Run was 81, wasn't it? But it's just... And I think the director wasn't a big fan of big American cars, so he was quite happy to sort of trash them. But just a bizarre part of the film, wasn't it, really?
That's the thing. It's like, because firstly you get all of these sort of security people going out on their dirt trike things.
Yeah.
And you think that they'd be used to using them in some way, shape or form. But Bond doesn't really need to do much for them to crash on their own. It's just really surreal. And then the cars come out as well, and they just keep crashing on their own. Rather than picking the flat route through the kind of little mounds, the cars are trying to go up on the hills and everything, and it's like they were just like, let's just crash everything and we'll just cut an action sequence together out of it. It's mental.
Okay, again, in my notes here at this point, I've just written down, was Cubby on drugs? I think we mentioned this before. Because it says, I've written down, Cannonball Run, where was this filmed? Was Cubby on drugs? Las Vegas version of Smokey and the Bandit. And finally, for some reason, I've just written down modesty patches on nipples. I think that's probably a later scene, but just the whole thing was just, again, surreal and weird. Yeah. And it just felt very un-Bond-like. I mean, the nearest I can think of this scene was that reminded me of any Bond sequence was the amazing 180 flip of that car going across the river in one of Moore's films.
Yes. That was Live and Let Die, I think.
Probably.
We will talk about that.
With the big redneck policeman. But so, I think we'll talk about that later on. But that's the nearest it got to it. It was just weird and surreal and...
Are we talking about... Sorry to interrupt. Are we talking about the car chase on the Las Vegas Strip?
Well, later on, yes.
No, we're still in the kind of desert at that NASA sort of space base thing. But from there, he then escapes with Tiffany. Yay!
Well
Give me a cheer.
Tiffany Chase.
Yes, that's right. In one of my favourite cars in the Bond series to date, the Mustang Mach 1 1971 model. Absolute effing beauty. Absolutely beautiful car. I love my muscle cars. I love Mustangs. I've got a Mustang itch that I still need to scratch. That car is absolutely gorgeous. Absolutely gorgeous. So I was really pleased to see that in this film.
They had a deal with Ford, didn't they? All the cars in these were Fords, which is why they were quite happy to trash them. But I think Ford insisted that the one was shown, and they also insisted that Bond had to drive the car, even though it was Tiffany's car. So he said, "Get in," doesn't he? And then he drives off.
Yeah, because then all of a sudden it becomes,
a Bond car.
Bond car, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
To be honest, I want a black Mustang because John Wick.
Yep.
Yeah. But then we get that nifty little sequence in through Las Vegas. That was shot on a backlot, actually. I don't know if it was shot in the USA on Universal's backlot or if it was actually shot at Pinewood. But it was definitely shot in a studio, portions of it anyhow.
What, the Las
And then we
Vegas
have
scene?
The Las
car
Vegas
chase?
scene.
No,
Yeah.
that was filmed in Las Vegas. Because if
Was
you
it?
notice, there's all the punters queuing up for slot machines. They're all standing out watching them film it.
Well,
Yeah.
no, the bit in the bit in the car park where he sort of weaves in and out and so on. That was done in the back lot.
Oh, yeah.
That was done in the back lot. But then we get that stunt, the two-wheel stunt, when he goes down the dead end and the sheriff's right behind him is like, "I got you now." And there's like a narrow alley. Think pod racing,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Phantom Menace. Not quite. Sorry, it's a very. I had to get my Star Wars link in. Sorry. And then there's a very conveniently placed ramp, and then Bond goes up. I think passenger side to get through the alley, but then there's a continuity error because when you see them come out the other end, he's the other side up.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah,
But he turns the wheel, and I think he hits another ramp in that scene. So I think they address that continuity. I think if you watch it again, he does turn the wheel when he changes sides.
Okay, I'll have a look at it
Which
again.
is weird.
I
Yeah.
don't know if I can bring
But
myself.
what you said earlier about Howard Hughes closing Vegas explains now why the Strip was so devoid of traffic. Because there's no way that I wrote in my notes at the time was no way would the Las Vegas Strip be so devoid of traffic. They've actually built in Vegas a side kind of freeway that lets you get to the car parks of all the main hotels. And that's what you're supposed to do. If you go on the Strip, you're stuck in traffic.
Yeah.
So that now explains why the Strip was so bare. So
Yeah. No, they did. They shut it down for 5 nights. So they finish that. They get to the honeymoon suite at the hotel, and then at White's building. And this is where Bond then takes the elevator in the unconventional way to try and reach the very, very top, which is White's kind of office penthouse
I enjoyed
layer
that scene.
thing. That was really good. Yeah. I mean, the one thing Carolina said after what, so we both watched it in silence, because it is quite, especially when he's on the top of the lift and then it kind of goes to the top and then he looks up and, it's like, is he going to get crushed or whatever? And then he rappels over. And then as he goes through the vents, through the window, Carolina just says, "You wouldn't dress like that to do that, would you?"
No, you'd be in like a black roll neck catsuit, wouldn't you?
Yeah, with a
You'd
box of milk.
you'd be dressed more like Johnny English, wouldn't you? Really, for that sort of scene.
Don't forget the milk tray. But no, that was quite a good little sequence. But yeah, you would not do it in a. But then when he goes in, he sort of lands on what looks like a commode. Is it an actual toilet? Oh, it is because there's a toilet roll there.
There is, yeah, but it's meant to be Will White's business hub. Like basically, the best place for getting all his work done is whilst he's having a dump. Yeah, and you can see he's got like a rack of newspapers he can read whilst on the toilet next to him, and the bog roll and all the screens.
All the telephones, different telephones there, different lines.
I was actually, the first time I saw that, I thought, oh, that looks quite a nice place to have a wee. It all looks very comfortable, as long as the seat is slightly cushioned and yielding. Otherwise, you're going to have problems with hemorrhoids, aren't you?
Yeah. I'll tell you what, though.
That's what I was thinking when I watched that.
Who was the fucking arsehole that used that toilet last? Look at the length of the toilet roll. It's been left hanging, like almost down to the floor by the looks.
Is he a mullet or an overhang man, though?
What's a mullet? Is that when the toilet rolls
around the other way? Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my god, that irritates me even more. Like, what the? Do you know? She's about 35 episodes behind, so it's a long time in the future before she hears this. But when she changes the toilet roll, she does it the mullet way, the other way round.
Oh,
right?
Divorce her.
Oh my god, yeah, I know. Like, totally. Oh, I love her. I love her so much, but I love her so much. But
do you find yourself having to turn it around each time?
Yeah, every single time.
Does she turn it back, Bobby? Does she turn it back afterwards?
She does.
Because if she does, and she knows that you're doing it, you see, but she's still turning it back and saying nothing.
She's fucking with me, isn't she, John? Trying to drive me nuts. I'm going going to have to insert a warning at the beginning of this episode before any of it rolls, right? Is anyone's listening in your cars on your summer holidays or whatever, please just skip to the next one. Don't listen to this one. All the business episodes of Tailoring Talk, there's no swear. Well, actually, no, there was swearing on one recently, and it wasn't even me. It was a lady. Swore like a trooper. But yeah, anyhow. So, can I just say, because I've just... Right, so I don't like his tux. I don't like that tux at all. The satin on it is disgusting. It's a notched lapel, one button, fine. But what is with this? It's got the wavy satin on the lapels. It looks gross.
Is this is the one where he's sitting on the bog, basically?
When he's sitting on the toilet,
yeah. For me, the one that stuck out for me was the one where he actually goes to Howard Hughes's house, Walter White's house. That white,
the cream one.
Yeah, that cream suit. Love that
cream linen suit with the pink tie.
Yeah, now that I love. So that kind of made up for the fact that the other ones were so bad.
Absolutely terrible, really. So anyway, so he gets out of the toilet and then he finds Blofeld and Blofeld, but which one's which? Two Blofelds. And then they talk about something, and I can't remember what the hell it was. Probably Blofeld's plans.
I think the phrase "wrong pussy" comes at one point as well in that sequence.
Yeah, it does. And are there two cats as well?
Yeah.
Yes, there are,
Yeah, because there's one cat at the desk with Blofeld at the desk, and there's another cat that's with Blofeld on the sofa. So
what we're
Bond's
saying here, a third cat. We've now reached three white cats for Blofeld.
Yeah, and crucially, one of the cats has the diamonds around his collar.
From the intro sequence.
Yeah, exactly.
So it must be the cat. So the cat with the diamonds is the real Blofeld cat, and the other one was an imposter.
Yeah, he did the cat with the diamonds, right? They obviously trained him well, because when Bond throws or kicks the other cat and sees which way it goes to decide who he's going to kill, obviously it's the clone cat, or it's the cat, the actor cat, not the real cat, because then like the real cat comes in with diamonds going, "Hello, I'm the real cat. See, tricked ya." Sort of, he walks in like, swaggers in. And it's not often you see a cat swagger in a film, but it swaggers in this film. Probably realised that I'm not the one being kicked. So interesting scene.
Yeah, I mean, he does really kick the hell out of that poor cat on the sofa, doesn't he? That was really bad. Do you think Blofeld, because he was getting his minions to plastic surgery their faces to look like him, do you think he was also getting stray cats and plastic surgerying their faces to look like his cat?
God, that's dark, Bobby.
That's going too far. I'm sure they would have been able to have gone similar looking cat.
I am going to start my rewrite or my reboot of Diamonds Are Forever, but my version. Ha 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 ha. That is quite dark.
One question. Well, yeah, one question before we move on in this scene, right? Did any of you watching this scene not just say to yourself, for goodness sake, Blofeld, just shoot Bond dead?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Don't create some convoluted scene where he gets gassed and then carried out and put somewhere else and thrown and then transported. Just shoot him.
Just kill him.
Nemesis. Just shoot him dead.
Yeah. Put us all out of our misery.
It's true.
Oh dear.
Yeah, but then it's
instead
like
he gets put in a pipeline, doesn't he, or something?
Well, the thing is, before that, it gets worse because they gas him and then they put him in the back of the car, and then Wit and Kid or whatever their names are, then drive him out of Blofeld's lair. But then they sort of kind of come out, and then a rock made out of plastic or whatever sort of goes up. It's basically like a scene from Thunderbirds.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, the back cave entrance. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Because Carolina was like, she gave up. This was the point where she gave up. She was like, "Fuck this." She's like, "This film is ridiculous. This film is stupid." She goes, "It's like those things we used to watch when we were kids, where it was puppets on a string."
Yeah.
It's just crazy. But he's in the boot of the car, and they're basically stick him in a pipe, which then the next morning he's buried underground, isn't he?
Yeah,
I was a bit confused by that scene because they made a big thing about him lying down on a bottle of perfume and smashing it, But obviously that became clear later on in the film.
Yeah, but at the time, you wondered if
the plot.
You wondered if he broke it because he sort of. It kind of looked like he covered it up quickly so they couldn't see, and then it was smashed when he went, and so you're wondering if he'd taken some glass to untie himself or something.
Oh, I don't know. It's very confusing.
Thing is, you go to Vegas. If you want to hide a body, Vegas is the place to do it, and there's loads and loads of dead bodies in Vegas in the desert. In the middle of nowhere, and they don't have to go crazy, with the plan to bury the dead. But in this case, they got this whole big crane and pipes with a means of escape. Why did they go to so much trouble? Well, if all they wanted to do was
just shoot.
Yeah, if all they wanted to do was kill him, all they need to do was just put him in a desert somewhere, in a cornfield, a la Casino. Body would never be found.
No one checks that the pipe's clear or anything. But then he does make a friend.
The machine that goes through that we think is sealing up the pipes is a real machine, but it's designed to check the pipes. So people do check them for obstruction, I think.
But it's just that machine would probably kill you if you didn't get out of its way, right?
Yeah.
But he does make a little friend down there, doesn't he?
Yeah.
Oh, what, Ben?
It would have been a perfect opportunity to play that Michael Jackson song, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
It's Sean Connery singing it. I won't try and do it. I might try and do it as an outtake. So anyway, Bond manages to get out because he manages to follow the tunnel down, and then he sabotages the machine. Yeah, that's it. He shorts the machine that's meant to be sealing and clearing the tunnel. And then obviously that means that they have to come to sort out the malfunctioning machine. And then he appears at the manhole, the way that we love him appearing in these situations with some sort of quip, and then walks out in full tuxedo. It's brilliant. And then we switch to probably his best outfit in the film, which is that sort of soft, kind of pinky looking linen suit with a tie that is done up way too short. I don't know what the hell they were thinking there. Crazy. But he's with the CIA guys and with Q, and they have worked out where Mr. White's house is and where he's probably being held captive. So Bond goes, and that's where he meets Bambi and Thumper. And
this scene, he looks the oldest he looks in all of the film. Of all the film, he looks the oldest here. He looks like their granddad's arrived for an afternoon of watching Bond.
There doesn't seem to be any consistency in his hair or his wig in this film. Because in some scenes he does look like his old self, from the 60s. Yeah. And then in others it looks like he's basically doing this while he's preparing to play Ramirez in Highlander.
Yeah.
Yeah. I am Ramirez from Spain. It's ridiculous. We should talk about that film one day on the other on PPT. Yep. So Bambi and Thumper are two guards, I guess, or bodyguards or whatever, and Bond wanders in, his cheeky little grin on his face, because it's like, okay, I'm going to have my wicked way with these two, and they absolutely kick the shite out of him. The weird thing is they eventually kick him off into the swimming pool, and then they go to drown him. After having had his ass handed to him for the last 5 minutes, in the swimming pool, he's got these two very strong women holding him down, but then somehow he manages to get out of it, and then with one hand on each head, he then basically starts drowning them, which I thought was pretty
sexist. It was lame. It was lazy.
And lame.
Yeah. Yeah. It was clear that these girls, knew what they were doing because they were hired by the top brass. They did a lot of flips and things like that, and they, even though they were very beautiful, they also had a menace about them as well. So really and truly, he should have had no chance. But because it's Bond,
it's getting some really good Grace Jones vibes from Bambi as well.
Yeah,
or Thumper. She was really, the way she moved was really cool, really menacing, and.
Yeah.
I'm waving my hands around right now. You can't see this, but the way she held herself and the way she bent her body was really cool.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. There was a lot of that, around that period, but no, it was just too easy for Bond in the end.
Yeah. Well, they managed to rescue White from there to get him to the casino. And we go back to the casino, and then we have a lovely moment with Q where he's basically playing the slot machines and he's winning every single one. And then Tiffany sort of comes up to him and she's like, "Oh my God, that's amazing. How are you doing it?" And then he explains that he's got some sort of electromagnetic gadget.
Yeah, it's an RPM controller. It's an RPM controller, so it detects the precise moment when it's going to hit the right combination. And it just works the sequences automatically to come up with bar, bar, bar. And he's doing it with every single one. That's the only gadget I made a list of all the gadgets. So it was one was the mouse trap in the pocket, the fingerprint that was added to James Bond's finger. There was the RPM controller, and then there was the voice box. That was it.
And that was it.
But there was also him, with his tool to get on top of the
his rappel gun.
Yeah, to get on top of the
rappel. Yeah,
there was that as well. But apart from that, those are the only tools, the only gadgets.
I think the RPM counter is a great gadget, but it's pure science fiction. But it'd be awesome to have.
Oh, it's pure.
So
you
get thrown out of the casino as soon as you were found out, though, wouldn't you?
Oh, you'd get murdered.
Yeah, you would.
You'd get killed.
Yeah.
But he's sort of halfway.
There's Q just wandering along, like not even collecting the cash, just rinsing every machine. Quite happily in front of all the cameras,
Because it's not about the money for him. He's just enthralled with this new gadget that he's invented, and he's proudly telling Tiffany about it. And then she just cuts him off halfway, poor thing, because she sees Blofeld wander past dressed as Maggie Thatcher. And then this is my first Gremlins 2, the new batch moment of this film, because he just looks ridiculous.
Blofeld in drag.
Blofeld in drag. And I think it was in when we were talking about On Her Majesty's Secret Service, and we were talking about Telly Savalas as Blofeld. And then I think I mentioned that Charles Gray's Blofeld is widely regarded as being the worst interpretation, and I totally agree with that. For me, it was awful. I know there are other people that would beg to differ, but I just thought
Charles Gray.
I didn't like him. I didn't like this version of Blofeld. I just thought he was pathetic.
Charles Gray's Dick Emery in drag, basically. Oh, you are awful, but I like you.
Do you know what? And you know what? It was a catalyst for him later on being in Rocky Horror Picture Show, and he was wearing the fishnet tights in that. So makes perfect sense.
I didn't even know he was in that.
Got a taste for it, didn't he?
Yeah.
It was.
John.
Yeah.
Clench your buttocks. I haven't seen the Rocky Horror thingy-majiggy.
Oh my God.
You're just about to give up on life, aren't you?
Well, I actually, do you know what? I've got a story about this because I'd never seen it. I knew about it vaguely, but I knew nothing about it. And I was dating a girl who was a bit, I would say she's had a touch of goth to her at university. And the local cinema at university was doing a Rocky Horror Picture Show night. And it was like an 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock showing. And she said, we should go. So we pitched up, just in our normal clothes. And oh my God, I felt like a pariah. Everybody there were in fishnets and weird. And obviously, there's a whole thing about when you go to Rocky Horror Picture Show, anybody who turns up not in outfits become the Brad and the Janet character. And I spent the whole night with people throwing rice at me from every quarter.
Yeah.
Whenever damn it, Janet turned, whenever that line came through, they all screamed it at us. It was just the most humiliating, awful experience. And I'm not a fan of the film. It's very much an acquired taste.
It's a cult film.
I know it's a complete.
Yeah.
It's a cult film.
Very
it's
much
a cultural phenomenon.
Film, yeah.
And respect it completely, but it's not my cup of tea. And I have traumatic memories of that however long it was at the cinema, because I couldn't leave. Imagine getting up and leaving halfway through that. I'd be lynched. So, you've opened some traumatic memories for me there, Bobby.
I'm so sorry. Can I just, whilst we've got you in that little pit of despair, can I just compound it, because you are our resident space expert? And
oh my God! Okay, are you talking about the science scenes here?
I'm talking about the science scenes because we now finally see this space weapon, and it unveils itself and unfolds itself.
It's a blinking camera. It's a camera lens. I have so many notes about this scene. I've said so offensive to scientists here. Just in the control room, they're all twiddling knobs to oscillators. There's no science involved there at all. They've just got, let's get some fancy oscillators from our labs in, and they can twiddle knobs. There's a sound waves they're looking at, and oh my God, the scene where it's shooting at the Earth. The Earth is an oil painting. The Earth is an oil paint. You can see the brushstrokes in the oil. Oh my God, the special effects. Oh my God. And I know Connery took all the money for the, but this is offensive. This is offensive.
And
let's make the rockets glow red, and then when they exploded, it pans back, and the rockets are still there, still glowing red after the explosion.
But never mind that. What about the Chinese soldier that is on fire in front of the rockets as they're sort of heated red?
That is crazy. It is mad.
Cue me making lots of, sort of stir fry jokes. So yeah, I mean that whole thing, because this is where the special effects, it was so cringeworthy, really. The other thing as well on the fashion side of things, right? So we are entering the 70s, which is full of big wide lapels and flares and stuff, and we know that because of Roger Moore, bless him. But it's almost like in this film, they start off like sort of late 60s, and by the end of the film they finish in the 70s fashion wise, because if you now look at what everybody's wearing in this sequence, so Bond is wearing a sort of tweed flannel hybrid jacket, but the lapels are
dark
massive.
herringbone tweed, actually, I think you'll find.
It's got that sort of clover kind of lapel shape at the top, and then what's his face, the American guy Willard, or whatever his name is.
Walter White or Willard White?
Walter, no, it's not. Is it Walter White?
Willard White.
Willard White.
Willard
Yeah.
White.
He's wearing, I mean, the lapels on his thing are ridiculously wide, but he's also got that sort of cowboy jacket thing.
It's kind of a Texan rhinestone look, isn't it, really?
Yeah, exactly. He's just missing that sort of, he should have been wearing that sort of love knot thing that they wear instead of a tie. But yeah, it's the fashion is just really inconsistent in this film as well. I do like the jacket that Connery's wearing in that bit, though.
But don't you think what I find fascinating about the Bond films, and kind of links to what we're doing here with the tailoring aspect, what an amazing time capsule the Bond films are. You can see it's one of the best ways of looking at not just the fashion but the social mores of the whole of our Western society from the late 60s to modern day. I think it's really fascinating. And historians of the future will be able to use it as as evidence of how things have changed.
But the MC in The Karate Kid in 1984 wears the same helmet, same jacket in the tournament at the end. He's got that same sort of like jacket with the Texan sort of
the leather
jacket.
patches.
Yeah, with the patches at the back. It's exactly the same, and that was 1984. So
wow.
Fashion doesn't change much in America.
No.
Yeah.
Miyagi Dojo Karate, and he's got that jacket on that.
That's a good spot, Phil. Wow.
Yeah, that film was so lame.
Yeah, no.
There was no karate going on in it until the very end.
I gave up my notes there. I just wrote one word at the end: the oil rig !
Yeah.
That's it. And then Bond's planes orb. That's all I wrote at the end.
Yeah,
he jumped out of the plane in his orb ball. So let's just pan back a bit to the whole oil rig sequence.
Yes.
Here. What was going on?
So they found an abandoned oil rig off the coast of California to film this whole thing, and there was meant to be lots of explosions and all the rest of it. Well,
there was 2 explosions, I think.
There were lots of explosions. Basically, they set all the explosive up, and then they started going off randomly when they weren't supposed to. And a lot of what we see on camera, it just so happens that the cameraman that was on one of the helicopters just had started rolling, and he just kept rolling. And so they had to intercut and play around with the footage to sort of get the explosions in the right sequence. But they started going off, apparently, I've read, sooner than they were meant to. But talking about his sort of Zorb thing, because Caroline was like, "What's that thing?" And I was like, "Oh my god, he's inside it," and he's sort of walking inside it on the water. So that inflatable ball that he's doing the sea walk on, it was a stuntman in there the whole time, up until the very last bit.
Yeah.
So they then cut, and then he then goes in there. So Connery goes in, they zip up the ball, and then they have to inflate it, which was very, very uncomfortable because basically where the air chute was basically it was air shooting straight into the ball and hitting his butt. And they could hear him outside moaning and cursing and swearing. He was not happy about it at all. The moment comes for them to unzip it and for Bond to make his appearance. And basically it's something to do with science, like the air that was inside, and then they unzipped it and there was like a sort of pop and a pull, and it pulled his wig off, and basically his wig was hanging on the zip on the front. And so they reset and they tried it again, and they basically did take after take after take, and his wig, no, it didn't matter what they did, they glued it down, they tried other methods of sticking it to his head. His wig just kept flying off in different directions, so it took them a long time to get the take without his wig flying off in some...
This film's a shambles, isn't it? Really?
I mean, in between takes, when Sean Connery was not required on set, he was on the golf course. He had a little racket going with him, one of the producers, and a couple of the other, I don't know if it was a writer and one of the co-direct second unit directors or something. But he was basically just playing rounds of golf. And by the time he finished filming, he was so good. He was basically at pro level. And he was just taking people's money off him.
What a
for
life
fun.
he's had, eh? What a life.
Yeah. But I mean, the whole Vegas thing and the access to, because they had the access to the golf courses. They actually paid and had the contracts in place for those so that he could just go and play in between. The whole thing was sort of built around keeping him happy. You know, much shorter shooting days, much shorter shooting schedule altogether. Just all sort of built around Connery and just, you know, making sure that he wasn't going to walk off in a huff. So it's crazy. And by this time, the relationship with Harry Saltzman was really strained. Like Sean Connery specified, he did not want Harry on set. He was banned from set. There was one day when Harry, because he liked being on set, obviously, because these films were his passion, and he turned up on set for one of the Las Vegas night shoots, and Harry Saltzman sort of went up to Connery's trailer where Connery was inside. I think he was playing poker or something with some of the other lot. And Harry Saltzman knocks on the door, opens it, and everybody sort of goes quiet because it's like, shit, what is he doing? Yeah, really awkward, right? It's like, what's he doing here? So Connery just got up. He doesn't say anything. He gets up, goes to the trailer door, grabs Harry Saltzman's cheeks and kisses him on the forehead like the Godfather. And then Saltzman basically looks at him, goes red-faced, walks off, doesn't go back to set ever again.
Wow.
And then Connery just sits down and carries on. Like, what a ball. I mean, you could look at it in one of two ways. Either what a wanker, or you could say, what a baller move. Like, seriously. Yeah. So, yeah, all this was going on. But anyway, I thought you'd like that story about the toupee and the Zorb, or whatever it was.
Yeah. It's around
Poor
this
guy.
time when we're on the rig that Tiffany Chase decides to kind of come across as a bit more,
Stupid.
Yeah, and she was a bit more sort of, oh, I'm now one of Blofeld's. I'm now almost like I'm part of Spectre or something, and I'm now become one of those girls, rather than sort of having her own agenda, her own free will to want to sort of deal in diamonds.
Well, I think she still does have her own free will because she's basically pretending, isn't she? Because she's there to help Bond. Which she shows later on when he gets the... Well, her intent is to help, John.
Yeah.
Give her some credit.
I've changed the tape. That's the wrong tape, you twit.
Yeah.
I thought that was very generous of him to call her that, to be honest.
It was kind of... I wanted to find it charming, but I just sort of groaned because I was like, you did all this hard work at the beginning of the film to create what we thought was going to be another strong female character, and you just put it all in the bin. And the bit where, the base is stormed, the CIA attack it, and then his henchmen come out and start shooting everywhere, and he gets in his little submarine to escape. And then she picks up a submachine gun, and Bond says, shoot them. And then she sort of points it at them, and as she's firing, she can't control it, and she basically just keeps going back under the power of this gun, and then she ends up going off the side of the railings, presumably into the sea. And I just thought it was absolutely ridiculous. I was like, my God, like, how could you make this any more? It just seems like a parody of everything that's gone on before by this stage. It was crazy. But yeah, that end sort of sequence on the Oral, and then Bond, John, what did you think of Blofeld being picked up in the crane and then literally just being swung around back?
Comedy with him sort of like sort of blistering and blustering and sort of, oh, what's going on? No, put me down, and just parody. It was just you'd just get out, wouldn't you? You'd open the door and jump out, not let yourself be smashed into walls and things.
Yeah.
It's meant to be an arch villain. It's meant to be like the leader of this big, underground group, and he's just like...
Yeah. But the tape was... Yeah. But the wrong tape was put in, so the sequence was still running to blow up Washington. But...
Yeah.
What thwarted the plan was the fact that the whole thing blew up. Is that what basically we are led to believe?
I think so.
Yeah. Well, no, I think Did she manage to swap the tape back again? Because I know she tries to, but then they stop her.
Well, she's seen to be fiddling with it later on, and Blofeld goes, "Oh, right, you're not the dim bimbo I thought you were. You're actually involved in this." But it's not made very clear, is it? It's just more weak writing, really, isn't it? To be honest, it's not made clear at all. But then Bond brings in the his backup with all the CIA helicopters and things, and it all just goes. Explosions and 3 explosions that are misfilmed and turrets and guns and just oh my God.
Well, the final one is where because he's swinging Blofeld in his little submarine around, and then he smashes Blofeld into the control center, and that's the one that causes the final explosion apparently that blows the entire thing up.
But Blofeld's not dead, is he?
Well, Blofeld is meant to be dead. So from what I've read of interviews with the writers, that the intention was that Blofeld is dead now. That's it, he's done.
Right.
And then it cuts all of a sudden, but we don't really get that resolution because then all of a sudden it cuts to a cruise ship with streamers and stuff, and Tiffany and Bond are there sort of waving goodbye to the CIA guys, and then they're sort of going off on, I presume, a little vacation or something together. But then as it moves off, we get our 2 favourite assassins. And very creepily just peering out of the below decks cabins there, looking like one of them. Is it what's Bruce Glover? Bruce Glover looks like Jigsaw from the Saw movies in this shot, doesn't he?
They are my favourite thing about this film, those two, I have to say. The comic relief. The Jar Jar Binks of Bond.
Yeah.
But you've just got this comedic scene at the end with the exploding pudding and getting the wine wrong, and sort of Tiffany fumbling about behind, but apparently this saves Bond's life because if she hadn't fumbled about, he wouldn't have realised the bomb was in the pudding. It's just like it's pantomime again, isn't it? People being burnt with kebabs and thrown off railings and.
But it's quite inconsistent because it's knock on the door, room service, and there's all this sort of grand spread for them. And Bond's like, we didn't order anything, and it's like, blah, 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 only the best for, whatever. And then he's serving him the wine, and it's almost reminiscent of, I don't know, you thought it was going to be as intelligent as that scene on the train in From Russia with Love, with the whole white wine, red wine business. And there is that very clever little sort of, I'd have preferred a claret if we were going to be served that. And he's like, oh, our wine cellar is low stocked on clarets. And then he's like, well, blah, 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 wine is actually a claret, you idiot. And, I've smelt that aftershave before, and the last time I smelt it, I smelt a rat. And you're like, okay, fine. But then it just turns into comedy again, because he somehow manages to, like, the other one comes over with the kebabs, doesn't he? But then they set fire to him while the other one's trying to garrote.
But they used wine. But they used wine to do it. There wouldn't have been nearly enough alcohol in the wine
enough, is it?
to set him on fire. It's crazy.
You need brandy for that, don't you? Really?
Yeah, or rum. Yeah.
Yeah.
So what they did is they wrapped the actor's wrists in asbestos.
Yeah.
And set fire to him. And then they cut to switch to, when he completely goes up in flames. Yeah. They switched to the stuntman. But what happened was that they set fire to him sooner than they were supposed to. So then he was burning longer than he was supposed to. And part of his wrists weren't covered. So his wrists started burning. But because he was trying not to ruin the tape, because apparently they only had one shot at it, he kept his mouth shut until he went over the side of the water. And then as he hit the water, once they called cut, he then said, "Can someone get me some help because my wrists have burnt?" And he really, really got seriously injured. Absolutely freaking mental. And then the funniest bit, like Carolina and I, we burst out laughing so much that we had to rewind it to get the catchphrase or whatever it was that Connery said afterwards, after he'd gone overboard. So when he puts Vint, or whatever his name's, tails between his legs and then ties the bomb to him and then throws him over, and he just explodes before he hits the water. And again, it's another terrible special effect.
It's the same explosion as a helicopter from the beginning of the film, basically.
Basically, yeah. We wet ourselves laughing so much because it was just ridiculous. And, I guess it's for that I kind of will remember this film with some level of fondness, because whilst it was terrible in so many ways, it was, looking back on it, it did provide more laughs than any previous Bond before it.
It passed the 6-laugh test, this film, actually.
Yeah.
It actually means it's actually a comedy. It's a comedy.
Yeah, exactly. I now want to watch Casino Royale, the one with Peter Sellers, and see if that's funnier than this. But yeah, I mean, John, you've talked about this. Phil, how did you find this very last sequence in the film?
I mean, I kind of wish I didn't see Austin Powers first, because it did resonate with the whole sort of, who throws a shoe? Honestly, that really hurt. I just thought, I really wish I didn't see Austin Powers first. I mean, it was ridiculous, but I mean, look, we've established this was for an American audience. They made a truckload of money out of this film.
They did.
It made an absolutely insane amount of money for the quality of the film that it was. And it just shows the kind of the level that Americans were looking at. And it's a shame, because in the following year, we had The Godfather, we had French Connection, we had some fantastic films that were released just afterwards. The Exorcist, and it's probably the best film of all time, and this is what they were watching for entertainment in between all of those great films. Deliverance, another film, was released the following year. So I mean, this was just kind of where the entertainment level was for the masses of Americans that existed in 71. So let's remember the audience that it was meant for, let's say.
Yeah. So, which brings us neatly on to our rating and review. So, staying with Phil, where does this rank in the ones that we've seen so far? Because this is now film number 7, and dare I ask, what do you give it out of 10?
Well, I'm going to take the positives first of all. The soundtrack is fantastic, and the incidental music in this film is fantastic. The cars are great in this film. I also love the Mustang. I went to a car show a few years ago, and I got to sit in one of these Mustangs, similar to the one that was in the film, and they are beautiful. So let's look at the positives. Those were the only things that come to mind. They tried to cast someone that was like Jane Fonda, but wasn't, which was also something that was, I think, important for the time. But the story went all over the place. So for the 3 positive things that were in the film, the soundtrack, the cars, the main soundtrack, the incidental music, the cars, and some of the car sequences with the car going horizontally, I'm going to give it 3 out of 10.
I'm going to give Phil's rating like an 8 out of 10.
My God.
John.
Well, here's how I'm going to work my maths out, right? Okay, so the word diamond or diamonds is said a total of 40 times in this film if you include Shirley Bassey singing the words. So divide that by 10, that's 4 out of 10. And I'll give it an extra mark because I laughed so many times. I'm going to give it a 5 out of 10. Okay, that's how I'm going to rate this film. I think that's being generous, 5 out of 10.
I think it's being generous.
I'm trying to be positive
I think
here.
it's being generous.
I mean, the fact that they were, no, 5 out of 10. I'm going to call it 5 out of 10, just being generous. Because it did make me laugh. It made me angry. I mean, it was a roller coaster of emotions, really, for me. So 5 out of 10.
Thing is,
how about you, Bobby?
The thing is, I do
sat here
think
talking longer about this film than any other.
But I think that there is room for Bond to get worse than this. I haven't seen a lot of the other films, but I suspect that there are going to be some Bond films that are worse than this, which is why I've given it 3.
I think, again, like you, up until the Brosnan era, I haven't seen these films properly, okay? So, I get the feeling that we've got to wait quite a while to get one worse than this, because I don't remember any of the Roger Moore ones being that bad, but then I only remember them from 5-year-old memories. So, yeah, I'm very, very excited for the next phase.
Yeah, me too.
But let's see. Maybe we'll be pleasantly surprised. I know by the time we get to Die Another Day, we definitely will have a film that is on par with this or slightly below it. But positives. Okay, so the soundtrack, Shirley Bassey and the theme song. Although now when you look at it in the context of a phallic object, basically a dick, it completely changes the meaning of that song. And I've had that song going through my head for 4 weeks now, feeling like a superhero, and now I feel
I would then I seriously don't recommend Little Red Corvette.
Oh, okay. Well, we'll have a Prince discussion separately. So soundtrack, I kind of like the shift in tone, sort of ushering in the new sort of 70s era with some of the sort of outfits and so on, and the kind of the big American cars and stuff, because there was a lot more of that from memory in the Roger Moore era, or at least some of it. Maybe some of the humor, because it kind of got us ready for the Roger Moore era. Like I'm really struggling here. But then, the neggy stuff for me, Blofeld was terrible in this. I don't like the way the script went. I think fair enough they wanted to try and find something a bit more exciting than the normal formula. But do you know what? Sometimes you're going to watch a Bond film, something around the normal structure and formula is what you want. It's a bit like why you go to your favorite restaurant. You very rarely order anything outside of your 3 favorite things that they do. So damn Cubby Broccoli and his dreams about his friends. So I'm on a par with John. I give it a 5 out of 10. Like literally middle of the road. It's definitely for the complete. I'm glad I've seen it for the completist in me. But if I never see it again, I wouldn't be bothered at all. I would rather see On Her Majesty's Secret Service again than this.
I've started to regret me paying £8 to watch it last night, to be honest.
Yeah. I mean, I'm glad I just bought all of them in one go, because then I can apportion, like I would pay £20 for Casino Royale, and then it notches this down to maybe I paid 5p. That's how I'll rationalise it. So disappointing. The aggregate score on Rotten Tomatoes is 63%. So
that shows there are some real howlers out there.
It's really funny though, but if you listen to the lads over at Really 007, great podcast. I totally recommend it. Anyone who's listening, you'll probably stop listening to this one after you listen to that one. But you know, some of the guys, there is an audience for this film out there who absolutely love it, and there are even some people for whom this is their favourite Bond film of all time, and they love it for the humour and for the change in tone, and they also love it just because it was Sean Connery's last appearance in the official series of films. So there you go. I mean, that's, I guess, the nice thing. We talk about this on Play Paul's Turn. We're all different and we all have different tastes and so on, and you know, that's what makes movies so great at the end of the day. Or not.
Rotten Tomatoes give Diamonds Are Forever in the top 27, like ranking all 27 Bond films. It comes in at 18th out of 27.
What 9 are worse than this? I bet that probably a couple Roger Moore ones, right?
Don't tell us.
Let's not.
Don't tell us.
Don't tell us. No. Keep that list though, John, because what we'll do is we'll compare it to our.
I don't agree.
I'm going to try and put together like a Tailoring Talk Bondathon consensus chart, where I sort of aggregate what we rate them, and then I'll put them into some sort of order, and then we'll see if the Tailoring Talk ranking matches up with the Rotten Tomatoes. That'll be quite interesting. I've got 2.5 years or whatever to work out how the formula works, so I'm quite confident about it at the moment. So yeah, there we go. Live and Let Die next.
Nice.
I am so effing excited, to be starting the Roger Moore era as a fully grown adult. That is questionable. As a physically fully grown adult, to be able to watch these films properly for the first time in my entire life. John?
Well, these are my films. Roger Moore was my Bond, so I'm very excited indeed.
Yeah. Phil?
My rating's going to go way up.
My boss is saying that Live and Let Die is his favourite film, so I'm actually...
Oh, really?
Yeah. So I am also looking forward to this one.
Yeah, I mean, we've got some of the best villains in Bond history, I think, coming up. You know, some of the ones that you just will remember for the rest of your life if you're younger, and if you're older, you'll just remember with so much fondness.
So looking forward to Grace Jones. One of my favourite characters in one film.
I've not seen that film. Probably I've seen little flashes of Christopher Walken on a blimp or something, and
you're in for a treat.
I've not really, not seen it. So it's great for me because this is like fresh eyes and everything.
Yeah,
it's brilliant. So guys, thank you so much. I'm sorry it was such a disappointment, but hopefully we've had fun again.
Well, we have we've certainly dissected this one, haven't we?
Yeah.
Oh, we really have, yeah. But yeah, no, thank you. Thanks, both of you. And I am looking forward to Live and Let Die now. I've actually seen the extras from the Live and Let Die iTunes thing. And I've seen some of the a little bit of the archive footage. I tried not to look at anything that was going to spoil the movie. But there's also... John, if you get time, on the iTunes version, there's a little. It's introduced by Michael. What's his name? Barbara Broccoli's...
Michael McIntyre.
No, not Michael McIntyre.
The comedian. No.
Cubby's son-in-law. Cubby's son-in-law introduces, who is the modern day producer. Introduces some archive footage of Roger Moore in a sketch show, and I found it very funny and very charming, and it's from 1964, and the sketch is basically a secret agent goes on holiday, and the secret agent is in Fleming's James Bond 007. So Roger Moore did play 007 nearly 10 years before he actually properly played the role in Live and Let Die. So you want to have a look at that. It's very charming. I found it quite funny, but it's very, very charming.
And yes, Yaphet Kotto is in that film.
It is him, isn't it? Yeah, I thought so.
No, he's in Live and Let Die.
I know he's in Live and Let Die, but I want to know if that was him in this. So I need to look that up. Brilliant. Right. Thank you, guys. We'll wrap that up. Thank you so much, all of you, for putting up. If you've made it this far, write in.
Well done.
Because you really do deserve a freaking prize. But we really appreciate you joining us. We do genuinely love making these 007 themed episodes, and we do love to get your feedback after each one. So you can catch Tailoring Talk on Instagram at Tailoring Talk Podcast. And you can also email in tailoringtalkpodcast@gmail.com. You can support the show by buying us a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/Roberto Revilla. And you can also help us out by reviewing us and giving us a rating if your podcast listening vessel allows it. We will be back next month to review Live and Let Die. Meantime, take care, and I'll see you on the next episode of Tailoring Talk. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Well done for making it this far, Bobby, with your 4 a.m. start.